Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Knights of Last Call. We are returned, and with none other than the great, the powerful,
the one and
only Donnie. I don't know that we have another Donnie on the Patreon, so you might be the one and only. Welcome back, Donnie, to the show. And of course, Donnie is here because last time we were here, we were talking about Earthdawn, and we had a tip goal, and we crushed it. And everybody said, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And this is obviously a game system that you two are very passionate about, and Donnie puts my knowledge base to shame. But not only that, you've actually been using the game,
yep,
whereas I have not for over a decade or so. I have very fond memories of it, and it was a very, very impactful game for me and my group. It was kind of the first, we dabbled with GURPS, but we never really got into it. This was the first non-TSR, non-D&D game that we really, picked up and we're like, okay, we're playing with this, because it was so fun. It was so different. It felt so cool. And it just always has had that very special place in my heart. But you all wanted Donnie back to talk about Earthdawn. So here we are, December to remember, December to remember. I'm sorry.
Nice.
But we've been having guests all this month. Last week we had Bob on to talk about Torchbearer and teach him the rules of the game, because he's going to be playing in my game starting next year. And then, of course, next Thursday, it's PF2 ratings. We're going to have a bunch of our PF2 experts on. Last week, we had Jackal and Karamak. This week, we're having Darth and maybe Boothby. And then maybe in 3 weeks, we might have everybody. We might have Whoople, Darth, Karamak, the whole crew. So basically, this whole month of December, we're just having guests on. And next Tuesday, we're doing a sort of a tandem first look with Ben, and we're going to be looking at troubleshooters. So that's what we're here for. And of course, we're here because of you all. So thank you so much to loyal followers and supporters of the show. But so tonight, last time we kind of covered the mechanics, the core mechanics of the game. Tonight, I want to answer your questions. If you have a question for me, if you have a question for Donnie, there's definitely some, things that I still want to talk about. I want to dig into some of the classes, or I should say disciplines. And I do want to show you, some of the cool little, nuts and bolts and features of how the game works. And then we can also talk about lore. because I think the lore of Earthdawn, the Barsaive campaign setting, is pretty compelling and pretty cool. So again, if you have a thought or comment or question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. And of course, we do have our 2 goals. One is our super chat, just showing your love for the Earthdawn. Love to see it. And then our tip goal, which will be going on for the rest of the month, is to have a New Year's Eve stream. On New Year's Eve happens to fall on a Tuesday, so it works out really well. So maybe we'll have one of those. God knows I'm not doing anything. Pathfinder is ready to learn more about Earthdawn. Hopes that I'm doing well and the rest of the nights. Yes, thank you, Pathfinder. Gonzo is very excited. Earthdawn round 2. Bob is here in exile. Sunhawk was thinking about all hats ranked stream we were talking about. Yeah, we need to keep it a little bit on the rails. CCav, welcome. Voinupla, welcome. First stream, yes, live from the beginning. Awesome to see you. Sorrel, nice to see you as well. Lollipop, great to see you. Bob is complimenting your shirt, Donnie. Ken says hello to Donnie and Derek. Mike T is in here, loves the shirt. Made it to a live. I got one too. He's not the only one with a cool shirt. Jackal is here as well. Jackal, one of our 3 elitist fucks that the internet was shitting on, which I love to see, of course. Beowulf says, would you look at these elitist pricks? I bet they don't even know all the rules 100% accurately, and they might get something wrong. So, Donnie, Earthdawn. Uh-oh. I lost you, Donnie. You know what? As someone who, my microphone was going out last time, this is... Hold on a second.
I think it switched microphones on me here.
It did. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Well, right. it did on its own. So
okay.
Yes.
All right.
Earthdawn, greatest system ever made by man.
Yes, there we go. Great system or greatest system ever. So again, let's, for people who maybe didn't fully pay attention or didn't catch our first one, Earthdawn fundamentally is a, roll high, beat a DC system. So in that perspective, the game isn't really that different, than a D20. What is different is that in order to determine what your total value is, you don't roll a D20 and then add a modifier, and then add a bunch of different modifiers. Instead, the game has a universal system called the step system. And everything either increases your steps or decreases your steps. And I will admit, it's a little fiddly at times, because you need to learn it a little bit. But, most of the things are pretty good. It's on the GM screen. It's on the character sheet. But as your step value goes up, instead of adding a bigger bonus, you just roll bigger dice and more dice. We have a tip from Lollipop Candy coming in. We'll let Lollipop give a little speech here.
Lollipop Candy tip $10. Earthdawn hype. Great to see Donnie on again. Stream layout nitpick. Derek is center aligned and Donnie is right aligned.
Okay. He's complaining that your nameplate isn't aligned, so now I have to fix it because this is what we do. Listen, we don't accept anything less than the best here. And I am ashamed for all times that this travesty has occurred. All right, there's guessed that. Thank you, Lollipop, for that, and I'm glad to see you're supporting the channel and supporting Donnie. That's the most important thing. All right, here we go. And because of that $10 tip, I will fix the nameplate for Donnie. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Thank you. Only because you tip, Lollipop. So you basically you get more dice, and if you have an advantage on something, basically, or if someone's behind cover, you might subtract some steps. If you have a debuff, you might subtract some steps. If you have a buff, you might add some steps. And fundamentally, most cases in the game, you're going to have your attribute rating, which is pretty close to strength, dex, con, int, whiz, charisma for the most part. And then you're going to add some sort of skill or talent rank, and that's going to tell you this is the total thing that you value. So if your strength is 5 and your melee weapons talent is 3, guess what? Step 8. And so you look at the little chart and you say, oh, step 8 is, I don't know, D12 plus D8 or something, or D6 plus D8. And that's what you're going to roll. And that's going to be, and there's no other additional modifiers. You just roll the dice. Now, when you get high level and you get higher steps, yes, you might be rolling D12 plus D8 plus D6, or something like that. And so I will freely admit that can start to get a little cumbersome. But it's no different than being like, you're rolling a D20 and you're adding, 37, or something like that to the roll. Oh no, did we lose Donnie?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, your video feed. Oh, there it goes. Okay, kicked in.
Good Lord.
Listen, I myself am trying to put together a new machine because I keep having these problems as well.
I'm on this old Surface, and it's just fighting me today. So, All right, sorry about that. Yeah,
that's credit. But yeah, so it's a very simple, very basic system. So what makes the game cool in many ways for me is the way that the world is very diegetic, and that it mixes in with the mechanics of the game, and I think that's really, really exciting. Yeah, I'm curious, Donnie, like what for you really made the game so, appealing?
So, we did not come into Earthdawn like the typical route. We did not come from like a TSR and then, look for a non-TSR game. What we ended up doing was we were playing Shadowrun.
Oh, okay.
We were already in Shadowrun. We were already fans of FOSSA at the time, and they put out this RPG, and we were like, okay, let's give it a try. Let's check it out. And then immediately got drawn into the way that it interacts with the world, that the system interacts with the world that it set up. And we talked about that last time, about how there's a reason to go exploring. There's a reason there are dungeons. There's a reason there are these, horrible things out there hunting you down. And so that's how we got into it. First edition for a long time. And then kind of didn't get into it for a little bit. Second and third, not so much. And then fourth edition came back around. And of course, I just immediately went and bought all the books and PDFs and everything.
Yes, I see your stack back there consists of Earthdawn and Hackmaster.
Earthdawn and Hackmaster and Mithras, and then these guys sitting here. And then that's the collector's edition, first edition Earthdawn book. So,
okay. I got you. Shadowrun 5th edition is on Kickstarter right now. Donnie, are you backing?
No, I am not. None of my players are interested in Shadowrun anymore.
I'm not a Shadowrun fan, so 2 thumbs up.
You don't like trolls, apparently. So
no, but here's the thing. I just don't like trolls in a trench coat with like a pink, like a pink neon green mohawk. That's what I don't like.
Well, that's what's wrong with you.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. All right, so so again, one of the things that we talked about maybe doing here, let me hop over to our player's book, is I kind of wanted to give you guys an opportunity to take a look at some of the disciplines. Now, these are the equivalent to the game's classes, but remember, this isn't just like some job, okay? Your character, quite frankly, is kind of a magical adept, and you are indoctrinated into this discipline. And in some ways, the warrior or the sword master or the thief is just as like we accept this as the case for like the wizard, right? The wizard, was somebody, who went to had maybe an inkling of magical power, who went to the magical wizard school or went to the wizard's tower, learned about it, to harness his abilities, and he has to work really hard, and that's how he gets his powerful abilities. And everybody else is just like, yeah, it's just something you do. But in Earthdawn, every discipline is like, it's like you're a wizard. And so everybody is sort of indoctrinated into this, not just the way you fight or the way that you do things, but it's the way you think. It's like a philosophy that you espouse throughout the course of your life. And that's kind of what allows you to have this, in this case, literally supernatural ability, to change your pattern and to, accomplish these really great and powerful, deeds. So in Earthdawn, quite literally, like, and Donnie, correct me if you view this differently. In D&D, hit points are a very abstract concept, and we don't really fully understand like what it means to have 100 hit points or 200 hit points and to be hit by a gargantuan dragon and have its claws rake across you, but somehow you still have most of your hit points left, right? But in Earthdawn, your character quite literally has a magical talent called durability. And you could almost think of it as like they are literally magically making themselves tougher. Like
Yes.
the hit points actually, like in our instance, when the huge dragon or the horror rips, into your character, you're just a guy, you're just a gal. No, you've almost been like magically, fortified, and so, I'm not saying that like steel is going to bounce off of your arm, but I'm also not saying that it wouldn't, to a certain extent. I think there's even a talent called steel skin, but I could be.
And when it comes to the disciplines, like the idea that magic, that you're an adept, right? So you have magic coursing through you. You are special. If you look at the disciplines, I think there's only one. I think it's like Swordmaster, maybe. But there's only one that doesn't have like at first circle like an absolute magical talent, like just completely blatantly obvious that it's magic.
Right.
Yeah.
So
there's only one.
Yeah, because like even the warrior, he's almost like, floating, dodging away on like a blast of air, almost like a superhero, like a Jedi. So what I thought we could do, Donnie, is pick a discipline and kind of go through it and show people, kind of showcase, not necessarily the feats, they're called talents. But we can talk about talents, we can talk about half magic, we can talk about knacks. And so you guys can kind of get a feel or appreciation for what these character classes have. Now, in this case, I have only the Player's Handbook PDF. And so the higher circles are actually in an expansion book. And quite frankly, I love that. Because the modern thing is to have a bunch of classes that go 1 to 20 in the opening book. And in my personal opinion, that is so unnecessary, because why do I need levels 11 through 20 if this is the first book, And plus, those are the harder ones to balance anyways. I'm pontificating now. When you release your game, okay, release your game for the low levels when it's easier to get things right, because you have probably a lot more playtesting experience. Then as people start to play through your game and you start learning what works and what doesn't work, then you can go and design, the next set of levels and release that as a follow-up product for all the classes at once. And that way it's like, hey, if we're not playing a high-level campaign and we have no intention of playing a high-level campaign, we never need this book. Anyways, what do you think about that?
I don't know how you're supposed to, be a new player and do a superhero mythic character then, Derek. I mean, that's
right. Well, I also think that number one, there's the nostalgia factor, right? Like D&D just gave you, 20 levels of class, and now that's apparently what you have to do for all time. Right. But the other problem is people are like, yeah, but how am I supposed to know what feat I take at level 1 and level 2 if I don't know what feat I'm going to take at level 20 when my campaign inevitably in 2.5 years reaches level 20? Because of course no one's going to move and no one's going to leave the campaign and the GM isn't going to burn out and the adventure isn't going to fall apart and we're not going to get seduced by a new system and never finish it, because of course that's not going to happen. So I thought we could start with a look at a discipline, and the core book has, I think, 12 or 13 or 14 of them. And I thought, Donnie, we could start. What is your favorite discipline? We can take a look at that one.
Oh, Weaponsmith.
Oh, Weaponsmith. Ooh.
Weaponsmith, yeah.
All right. Very awesome. So we'll go down to the W's here. So the Weaponsmith, and again, I cannot help but point this out. The entire class is 2 pages.
2 pages. It's so nice.
Here's the wizard. How many classes is that? 2 pages. Now, granted, to be fair, each of these talents is described in the book. The reason why this is good design is because, for example, if we take a look at our Weaponsmith, okay, they have as one of the options that they can take through their novice, avoid blow. Well, it turns out that the Weaponsmith is not the only discipline in the game that gets avoid blow. So rather than printing avoid blow 8 times, all of the talents are located in a chapter where that it is described in alphabetical order. So we'll look up some. We won't look up all of them. But the Weaponsmith. So the Weaponsmith, in addition to their role as a craftsman that make mundane weapons, armor, and other goods, they can help identify and create legendary weapons. Nearly every community places great value on their Weaponsmith. So right off the bat, I think we have something really interesting here, which is that this is a artisan crafter class, right? That is, front and center as part of the core element of the game. And I personally believe that I always thought the Artificer was a really cool class for 3rd edition. So I love that they're doing this. But what's really cool about this particular class is this class is not just like some, wuss, right? Like they have melee weapons. They have, they can hang with the best of people. So why don't you talk about the Weaponsmith?
So I like them because they're and I think Lollipop kind of said it too, that having a non kind of typical class as one of your core disciplines, right? That you choose, that just on itself is cool. But what I like about the Weaponsmith is they're kind of a jack of all trades, right? They get a lot of really fun and weird talents. Some of their knacks are very cool for those talents. We can look at those later. And then at the higher levels, like in the companion, when you're looking at their higher circle stuff, I mean, they're just fun. They're magnificent, and it's just not a typical class that you would play in your F20.
Correct.
So.
And you can even see here, right? Like their important attributes are charisma, perception, and willpower. So in some ways, they're like a buffing class, right? Because they can help out people with their talents, and they can do this. But on the other hand, they're also kind of a fighting class because they can, look, they've got shield bash and fire blood and melee weapons, so they are quite capable of handling themselves in melee if you build them that way. But you can also see they've got danger sense and disarm traps, so there's also kind of an element there of being able to do things mechanically. But the other really cool part about this, and we've talked about this the first time, there is this whole subsystem in Earthdawn. Magic items aren't just you pick it up and then you start swinging it. So a big part of magical items is learning their history and figuring out their lore and their legend. And that is literally what enables you to sort of, draw from its magical power. And there's actually sort of, steps and levels of how much a magical item is capable of generating. Like you might have this really powerful artifact, but until you fully learn all of its secrets, you're not going to be able to unlock the full power. And to this point, the Weaponsmith has this talent called item history, which is quite frankly a talent that is kind of designed to interface with that subsystem. And so this is not just a very cool class from that perspective, but it's a very cool class to engage with that part of the game. I think troubadours also get item history. Is that right? The bard?
I believe they do. Yeah. And if
it's crazy that I remember that, but yes.
Right. It's so long ago. Yeah.
I know.
But item history, it would be like library use, right? I mean, it's that useful. When it comes to, especially when you're dealing with these threat items.
You just made a Call of Cthulhuism there with the library use.
I did. I don't know. Ben's probably not on, but I thought.
So very interesting there. So let's look at the class. Let's look at the discipline. And we'll kind of break down how, because again, it's only 2 pages, so it's not a big deal. And then, like I said, we will we'll pick a couple interesting ones that we can think might bear some additional time and attention to. I did see a question in chat, which I think got answered, but are circles diegetic? Yes. Yeah. So, the way that we talk about people being in 1st grade, 5th grade, freshmen, sophomore, circles are very much you get to a certain point, you go through this process and, sort of an initiation, a training, you're indoctrinated into a next circle. So you could literally, in the world, they would say stuff like, oh, that's the 5th circle weaponsmith, and you'd be like, oh, okay, I get that. He's awesome, So I think that's
and they also, the concept of being an adept is digestive. And Earthdawn's very, very big into training. If you want to go up a circle, right, or if you want to learn a new knack, you are constantly on the lookout for a higher circle of your discipline, so that you can get this training. So,
So again, from a perspective of making the character, it tells you, okay, charisma, perception, willpower. Those are 3 important attributes. So you may want to consider putting some stuff to that attribute. That being said, we know this class gets some melee abilities, so maybe you want to put some stuff into strength as well. Now we've talked about this before. Karma is kind of it's a meta currency that isn't a meta currency because it's actually in the game world. But karma is basically your character, because your character is an adept and your character is literally kind of special to the world. It's almost like they have kind of in-world plot armor, and karma is sort of represents that. And every discipline, it's kind of just role playing, but every discipline has a way of sort of like to harness their chi. In the case of the weaponsmith, they basically work at their, work at a forge or work at a fire, and they sort of shape a piece of metal into a dagger or an arrow tip, and then they shatter it. And when that's done, their karma is restored. It's almost like their way of like centering themselves or like rebalancing themselves. And everybody has a different, process for this. And it's very thematic and tied into their class. But mechanically, this doesn't make much of a difference, I don't think, right, Donnie?
No, I don't. Most of them don't. And like I said, I think it's just a way for the rules to reinforce the fact that all adepts are magical.
Right, exactly. Next, we see this section here for artisan skills, rune carving, and wood carving. So we've talked before about how artisan skills are very important in this world, because in this world, if your character becomes touched by the horrors, you basically lose all joy inside of yourself, and you're no longer able to create anything of art or beauty. And so as a means of sort of like proving that you haven't been contaminated by these horrors, everybody kind of learns an art or an art form. And so I think these are just suggested artisan skills. I don't think they're required, right?
They're not required. And
Yeah.
your artisan skill, your art can be anything. It could be reciting poems. It could be like, and they're talking about wood carving here, poetry, whatever.
Yeah. So again, just kind of more, suggestions. Then we want to talk about this half magic. So it says weaponsmiths may use half magic when caring for weapons and armor, and to recognize different types of weapons and armor used or worn by different name giver races or their creators. And I really want to focus in on this a little bit, because this is basically saying, they're a weaponsmith. They know shit about weapons. Yes, they know how to fix a weapon. They know how to tend to an armor. They know how to fix a shield. Yes, they know what weapons do. It avoids the tedium of needing endless skills just so that you can say that your character is good at this. What do you mean my weaponsmith doesn't have, armorer and weaponsmith and doesn't have, it's just, you're a weaponsmith. Yep. You recognize weapons. Yep. You know how to care for weapons. Yep. And when in doubt, it's like, there's a siege, and you're like, that catapult's not set up right. How do you know that? Half magic. So it's a great way of basically giving every discipline this very broad base of knowledge and skill, and say, if this is about your thing, you're good.
Yeah. And it keeps your character sheet from being like 8 pages long,
Right.
or having a Cthulhu level list of skills.
Right. It avoids it. A lot of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. The game does have skills, but that's very specifically you calling out something and saying, I want to have this specific ability. But for the generic, like if you want to worry about weaponsmith stuff, you don't have to worry about that. And as Derek says, you're a fighter, and he goes, I meant warrior. He says, if you're a fighter, fighter stuff. And that's exactly the point. You don't need, if you're a warrior, if we're talking Pathfinder 2 terms, you don't need warfare lore. You don't need siege lore. You don't need military history lore. You just have that. You're a warrior. You have that in your half magic. If somebody has a different weird style, you recognize it. Why? Because you're a warrior and you have half magic. So very cool stuff there. All right. So now we get into where you get into some choices and options for the game. So the first thing is everybody starts at first circle, and every class starts with a handful of what are called discipline talents. These are essentially I just lost my camera. Hold on a second. Donnie, keep them entertained.
Okay, so you can you'll have these talents that are available to you, and the talents are like you can think of them like Derek's gonna make fun of me. They're like feats, right? But they're all magical, right? The talent is magic. And so you get, like in this case for the weaponsmith at first circle, you get a free talent called craftsman. And this, I'll let you repair mundane things and weapons and armor. You back? Yeah, you're back. There he is.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the free talents that you'll get, at first circle when you're first starting out. Um, and then there's other discipline talents that you can take when you're building your character, and those are listed there under first circle as well. And the thing about Earthdawn is, you're going to get the name of EXP is escaping me right now. But
Legend points.
Legend points. Thank you. You're going to get legend points, right? And you're going to build your character and advance your character with legend points going through. But there will be times when you would want to spend legend points to say go from first circle to second circle. But at the same time, you might not want to do that. You might want to advance one of these other discipline talents that is under your first circle. So it gives you, not everybody's going to be at the same circle all the time, right?
Right. Yeah, everybody can, because the legend points are you acquire them and then you spend them, right?
Yes.
You spend them to raise the ranks of these discipline talents. You spend them to eventually train and go into a circle. But the cool thing about this is the game's way of saying, look, if you're a weaponsmith, you're going to have access to forge weapon, item history, melee weapons, steel thought, and thread weaving. Okay.
Everybody gets thread weaving.
Everybody gets thread weaving. It's basically your way of of connecting to things magically. You do it. Yep. Everybody does it a little different. The weaponsmith uses thread smithing, but other people use thread sword play or thread war or whatever. But so everybody gets this, and this is the game's way of saying, look, these are like the core talents of your discipline. Everybody's going to have those. Now, what starts getting different is that at each circle, okay, you get to add one of these novice talent options to the talents that you can take. All right. And so you don't get all of these. Okay. At first circle, you pick one. At second circle, you pick another one. And the novice talent options, by the way, you'll see second circle doesn't have anything, but that's because at second circle, you pick a new one. So your weaponsmith might take, let's say your weaponsmith is like, oh, I'm going to take melee weapons and forge weapon. And then for my novice talent option at circle 1, I'm going to take fireblood because that's a really powerful way to heal yourself in combat. Then at level 2, second circle, you get to add every weaponsmith is going to get conversation as a discipline talent. But you get to pick another new talent that you can take that other weaponsmiths can't take. So you might take, I'm still going down this warrior route. I'm going to take avoid blow. Now at second circle, we might all have different talents, but we all have the core talents. But what's different is these kind of expansion talents. And then when you get to fourth circle, you add these to the list of options that you could choose too. These are called your journeyman talent options. And by the way, you could still pick talents from novice. It's just increasing the size of the one. So now by the time we get to fourth circle, now you have a bunch more options. And again, you're not going to get all of these. So, the weaponsmith that picks up, battle shout or, earth skin is going to be very different than the one who has diplomacy and etiquette. And so it gives you these really, really powerful ways of making your character different, because in Pathfinder 2 terms, these are feats or powers, but you're kind of crossing the line, like it's like a fighter, being able to pick up bard abilities, or wizard, you know what I mean? Or wizard abilities or buffing abilities, because, and maybe your fighter has that power and maybe they don't. So I love these because this, again, every weaponsmith is going to have these core discipline talents. At fifth circle, every weaponsmith is going to get forge armor. You're good, right? You're going to have that. But what isn't the case is, or what isn't guaranteed is, which of these journeyman and novice talent options are there. And by the way, this goes to a circle, but I think in the companion, there's the master talent options, I think, for the final circles of the game.
Yeah, up to 15 so far.
Yeah. So, and I think it's just a very awesome system, because I think it's really cool because it allows for this kind of slow growth to your character. And by the way, I should point out that when you take one of these talents, you don't get it automatically. You still have to use your legend points to buy up the ranks for it. It just gives you access to it, would be what I would, how I would describe it.
And typically, going back to that whole training thing, you typically have to find someone of a higher circle than you to train you on it that knows it. So you have to maybe seek them out, or, you know, find somebody who knows this one obscure talent,
Right.
and convince them to let you learn it.
So the weaponsmith, we can see here, they start off, they have forge weapon, which is basically a weapon. I think, is it permanent? Is it like a permanent weapon buff? Let me see here. Forge weapon. I don't know if it's got a good bookmark here. Okay, here we go. Forge weapon. All right. So first, let's take a look here at this power. It says step, rank plus per, which is perception. So this is where basically how many ranks have you bought in forge weapon? So you might have 1 rank in forge weapon, 2 ranks in forge weapon, 3 ranks in forge weapon. And then what is your perception? That's an ability score. And so, you know, if we remember, our weaponsmith did say that perception is one of their kind of key attributes. So let's say our perception was a 4 and our rank is 3, our step is 7. And by the way, on the character sheet, your perception isn't going to be changing that much. Your rank on this isn't going to be changing that much, you know, except for when you level up, basically. You can write step 7, you know, whatever step 7 is, you know, D8 plus D6 or something, you know, or whatever it is. Okay, so we basically we calculate that once, and then if something levels up, we have to change it, but other than that, we don't have to do much. Strain 0 means it doesn't cost us any hit points to use this ability. Skill use no means this is a talent which cannot be learned as a mundane, ordinary skill. It's essentially, this is this way of saying this is magical. This is something that only adepts can do. There's a lot of talents in this book that say skill use yes, and you can go learn them the old-fashioned way, which, by the way, takes like weeks or months, because that's how really learning skills works.
And it takes more legend points.
Yeah, and it's less effective. Yes.
Yes, and it's less effective. Yeah.
But in some cases, you may want the ability for a mundane purpose, because maybe as an adept, you can only take talents which are inside of your character's core philosophy. But let's say you're a wizard and you really want to learn how to use melee weapons. Well, you're never going to be able to learn melee weapons through your wizard discipline, because that's just not one of the options given to your discipline. But you could still learn melee weapons if you really wanted to. You would just have to go and train for, you know, weeks and months at a time in order to get better at it. Voy, thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoy the VOD. So, and then action sustained, I believe, means that it's not just like one round and done. In other words, it takes a while to do this, and we can see that here in the description. So here you go, 1 paragraph, all right? The adept, that's you, performs a ritual to magically improve the damage step of a weapon, including melee, missile, and thrown weapons, but not ammunition like arrows or bolts. The work must be carried out at a properly equipped forge or workshop. The ritual requires 8 hours a day for 7 consecutive days, after which the adept makes a forge weapon test against a difficulty number of 6 plus the number of forge enhancements the item currently has. So in other words, the DC is 6 plus the number of times that you've increased its damage. And we can see here, for each success, the weapon's damage step is increased by +1. This can be used on mundane or magical weapons. They are quite lit. Well, it's not permanent, but it's a year and a day, which is what a lot of things, you know, very magical sounding. Oh, it's a year and a day. But they are, quite frankly, magically imbuing weapons with permanent higher damage bonus. And by the way, they can do it again. The only difference is they cannot forge a weapons bonus higher than their rank. So, you can't take it to +10 if your circle isn't +10. But, and of course, the difficulty level gets a little bit higher and a little bit higher and a little bit higher. But it lasts for a year and a day from the date of the last successful forging. So that means every time you reforge it, it not only does the damage step go up by 1, but it resets the year and a day.
That's your first circle. Your beginning level character just created a magic item.
Right. It is. I mean, it is now it's not a permanent magical item.
Permanent.
It lasts for a year and a day, But your weaponsmith, quite frankly, with enough time and inclination to do so, will start to basically pimp my ride on everybody's weapons. So we can see here, Relilyn is a novice weaponsmith with rank 3 in forged weapon. While her master has been called away on business, a warrior comes into the shop looking to have the enhancement on his axe renewed. You can see it's very diegetic, right? Like it's like, hey, come into the shop. I heard that you all are a bunch of weaponsmiths. I want to renew the enhancement on my axe. And it's like, you're talking in character, even though we're talking about the mechanics of the game. The axe has been forged with a +5 bonus. Relilyn can renew the enhancement with her own forged weapon talent, but the axe will only go down to +3 because, she's not a master. So her bonus is only +3. And the services of smiths can be bought in larger cities, but the more skilled the smith, the higher the cost. It is usually 50 silver times, which silver is the de facto currency in this game, times the smith's rank in forged weapon per attempt. And it's typical to get half of the fee up front, regardless of whether or not they succeed or not. You got to love it. But this is a PC ability, but it's also kind of an NPC ability. But it also points to the fact that these characters, can kind of exist in both worlds. And as a PC ability, like as a weaponsmith, it's one of those things. One of the things I really like about class-based games. I don't get me wrong. I love skill-based games. I've come to love them. But one of the things I love about class-based games is when you realize, okay, there's 4 of us playing, there's 5 of us playing. There's 14 classes in the book. And I like it when, and this is not the case. This is not really the case in like Pathfinder 2. Or even I would say D&D as much, where you go, I'm so glad that we have that class in our party, and at the same time, it's like, oh, remember our last party that had a weaponsmith? That was sweet. Like, it sucks that we don't have a weaponsmith and we don't have this ability just from the get-go of the game. There's a lot of overlap that happens now in classes to the point where I think classes has become kind of a very muddled and meaningless thing. And it's like, oh, you can have a fighter or a barbarian or it doesn't matter. It's a martial character. And you'll be fine. They do things a little bit differently, but they all do the same thing. And like, that's where I'm like, like now another example, again, I'm not shitting on it. It's just a philosophy thing for me. If you wanted a character that was capable of casting divine magic in, say, 3rd edition D&D, you had to be a cleric. Right? Druids cast druid spells, right? Sorcerers and wizards cast wizards or sorcerer spells, right? Bards cast bard spells. But now if you look at a game like Pathfinder 2, there's a lot of traditions, a lot of classes that can get the divine tradition. The cleric can get the divine tradition, but so can the witch, and so can the oracle, and so can the sorcerer, right? So there's this kind of like, so it feels less important now. And it's really more of like just a flavor of how you bring that tradition into place. Whereas these type of things really just cement you as being like, man, that's awesome that you had that ability. So yeah, that is, we had a weaponsmith. I remember when we played Earthdawn, my party did. And I just remember that everybody was just like, well, what's the point? What's the point of our adventuring party? It was to just do this as much as we could afford to do it. Which I was like, you know what? That is totally fair. That is totally fair. So good stuff. All right. What else do we got? So we talked about item history. So maybe we can take a look at item history. And again, these are just the bait. Now here's the other thing, which is really cool, right? Okay. I love this. You think these don't like expire? Like your weaponsmith is going to be probably putting ranks into forged weapon and item history and steel thought and melee weapons and thread weaving for the whole game.
Whole character. Yeah.
Right. And these will be, think about when your character is, has rank 7 forged weapon and you're making these, you're taking an ordinary weapon and increasing its damage by +7. It's not +7 damage, by the way. It's +7 steps of damage. Okay. That's a tremendous amount. I mean, if we look at, let's see if we have an equipment here. I don't know where the equipment is. General skills, talents, disciplines, equipping your character. What page is that on? Is it the end of the game? I'm just curious now. Here we go. Goods and services. Here we go. So if we look at these weapons here, like a do we have a table of the weapons?
Yeah, it's on page 433.
Oh, 433. All the description first. All right. There we go. Okay. There we go. Thank you, Donnie. If we take a look at this, so you can see that a broadsword, right, has a damage step of 5. So if you're with a 7, if you have a guy with forged weapon 7, they could make the damage step of this from 5 to 12. Okay. Which is crazy, which is absolutely crazy, and if we look here, that's going from how much damage you do D8 to how much damage you do 2D10, right? So you're quite frankly more than doubling the person's damage, which is, again, I think pretty awesome. But we're going to take a look at item history. So here we go. Another one with perception. So rank plus your perception. And again, it's sustained. The adept learns the history of an enchanted or mundane item. The adept studies the item for a week, carefully examining it for at least 1 hour a day, then makes an item history test against the item's mystical defense. That's right. Like the item itself has a sort of innate resistance to magic. If successful, each success, and remember, it's like every time you get over 5 is a success.
5 or more, yeah.
Reveals 1 new key knowledge from the item's history. When used on mundane items, which do not have true patterns, each success provides the adept with a different piece of knowledge instead of a key knowledge. Item history can be used multiple times on the same item, but each test requires another week of study. The adept can learn a maximum number of key knowledges from a given item equal to their rank in item history. So again, this is how, you have to start piecing together the history of an item. And guess what? If you don't have a weaponsmith and you don't have somebody who has this talent, how would you go and figure that out? You're going to have to go
pay somebody,
pay somebody, talk to somebody, do the research, go talk, go look in the archives like Gandalf, in Minas Tirith, and looking through the accountings of the ring. Whereas a weaponsmith is literally able, if you could think about it, like they're like magically able to like look at the source code, like look at the pattern of this item and extract that information. So they take something that in the game is kind of like, I don't want to say it's difficult, but it's, it's a challenge, it's an obstacle. And instead they're saying, well, my character ability gives me the ability to sort of, do this freely and easily. Not freely, but, but they have this kind of, leg up, if you will. And that is how your character will eventually be able to get magical items, is by learning those key knowledges. So yeah, and you can see as they go up in level, things start getting more, kind of crazy. Like you're like, okay, so, that forged weapon was kind of cool, magical, but but then you start looking at like 6th circle where they get temper flesh, where they're basically, if you could think of it, like they are, well, let's take a look what this says. Temper flesh.
Well, you're pulling that up. I just want to, as a quick aside,
yeah,
these PDFs are brilliant. Like if you go to the index and look for something, it'll link you straight to it. Right? I mean, they're very well put together.
Yeah, and obviously the bookmark here is really great because they have every single talent broken out into a thing, and you click it goes right to it. So very, very good. So in this case, right, instead of forging armor, right, or forging weapons, they perform a ritual to toughen themselves. They're basically quite literally kind of, you could think of it as Colossus, like how Colossus gets the organic metallic shell. They're kind of doing that because they have become so, their discipline of focusing on crafting things and improving things literally starts to be able to pervade not just weapons and armor, but, the flesh itself. We didn't talk about it, but another really important talent for them is Steel Mind, which, the weaponsmith basically is able to like have an extreme mental resilience, which is really important when you're dealing with mind fucking horrors that can, take you apart. So like they're able to literally steal their thoughts, S-T-E-E-L. Any case, they can perform the ritual. They draw icy ether from astral space, rolling the chilling substance over their own body, after which they make a temper flesh test against their own toughness step or a difficulty number of 6. If successful, they add their ranks in temper flesh to their health rating and wound ratings for 1 day. So they can just buff their hit points.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like pretty cool. I mean, like, because this character is like obviously magical, and they're not a wizard, you know, they're not a magician. They are, you know, a crafter, but because they are a magical crafter, they get these kind of like, you know, kind of, well, crazy, weird, magical abilities. So again, you know, as you go up through the talents, you know, you get all these different options, and you can start to, you know, get cooler and awesome stuff. I mean, and then, you know, again, it's magical, it's diegetic, but like, they're like, look, you're getting higher level. You're a weaponsmith. Come on, man. You need a forge. Hey, guess what? For 2 strain, the adept uses magic to create an improvised forge. Like, quite literally, you could imagine in the fiction of the game, this not wizard going up to like a campfire and focusing for a moment, you know, taking a little bit of strain, right? A little bit of damage because they're focusing. And, you know, the rocks begin to transform into primitive anvils, and a nearby stick sort of shapes itself into like a hammer shape. And it lasts for a day, and then you do get a -3 penalty to tests that are trying to go do it because it's not perfect. But they are quite literally able, they are such a weaponsmith that they can shape the world around them to make a temporary smithy. Don Dilla says, where do time-consuming projects like crafting fit into Earthdawn's gameplay loop or pattern? That's a great question. Donnie, any thoughts on that?
I mean, like, you know, even like forge weapon, right? It still takes like, you know, a week to do so, right? If you're talking about like mundane stuff, you know, those might be normal skill checks, and I tend to find that things in Earthdawn take longer than they would in like a Pathfinder 2 or a D&D. There's often, like, in the descriptions of crafting, they're talking weeks and months,
especially mundane crafting.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I would, you know, it doesn't fit into like a loop like you would have with like Blades in the Dark that has a downtime and would have clocks or anything like that. It's just kind of baked into the length of the system, I think.
Yeah, and I would also say that there's a strange kind of like magical realism to Earthdawn. Like, you know, like because, and again, obviously, you know, you want things to be moving and shaking, but the core understanding of the game is that your characters are going to these essentially dungeons, these abandoned caves and these citadels. And, you know, there certainly may be instances where time is a factor, and, you know, they've got to go be heroes and kick ass and take names. But my sense, and I didn't buy all of the adventures, like I had Barsaive at War, Barsaive at Chaos, which are great modules, by the way. But they're not really like adventure paths, right? That adventure path problem is a new thing. Because even in original D&D, where you would like be on a an adventure, you know, you might be busy while you're on that adventure, but then, you know, you kill the witch, you save the town, and that's it. Curtain drops, you know, and you, there's no ticking time bomb of, you know, of you getting, you know, needing something. So it, you know, in Adventure Path, when that witch dies, she drops a journal. And in that journal, it says, haha, you know, this was just the tip of the iceberg. There's another town, which is even in more danger. And, you know, you need to go and get that. And so you feel this constant pressure to just, you know, push. Ben dropped a tip, but it did not register. Ben, I don't see it in my feed, but maybe it's still percolating its way through. So maybe it'll come back in. But I hope... But I don't see it in my stream elements. So
yeah, stream elements doesn't seem to be talking too much in chat either.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's a problem with stream elements. Yeah, normally it's like, hey,
yeah,
you should tip. Let me see here. If I type exclamation point tip, does this work? Is the bot still working? No. Oh no, it's there. It's there. Okay. Pathfinder said, gonna grab me a copy of this book. What edition is the one we're looking at? We are looking at 4th. We're looking at 4th edition. And from what I could tell, having not really played the game much in the last 10 to 15 years. The 4th edition is pretty great. I mean, it looks like they've really consolidated a lot of things. I love the simple 5 over, 5 over, 5 over for success levels. Feels very natural if you're coming from, Pathfinder, where you're used to this kind of like 10 over equals critical hit. Well, this is basically just, if you beat the DC, you get 1 success level. If you beat it by 5 or more, 2 success levels. If you beat it by 10 or more, 3 success, right? You just keep adding these additional success levels, which can, let you do additional damage. All right. A more accurate attack is going to do more damage in this game. So I think that's really good. And the steps are a little bit more sensible to me than what they were in 1st edition as well.
Yeah. And Derek and Joe just, clean up a bunch of the 1E stuff. That's what 4th edition does. Like, for example, there was that one step that had the D20 plus D4.
D20 plus D4.
And they got rid of that.
They got rid of that. Thank God.
Which
yes.
is great. So they got rid of the D4 pretty much through all this stuff. So.
Right, which I also really, really like.
Yeah, well, especially with exploding dice, you can't have.
Yeah, it's just too much. It's too much squeeze for not enough juice, right? So you can also see that as you go up higher in level, right, your character gets some passive benefits. And you get like additional mystic defense, you get additional mystic armor. We talked about this before, but your character has 3 different defenses. You have physical defense, which is basically like your ability to dodge out of the way of an attack. You have mystical defense, which is your ability to resist spells. And then you have social defense, which is, your ability to resist being manipulated or lied to or affected by some of the social skills. You also then have physical armor and mystic armor, which work as damage reduction. So the way armor works in this game is it absorbs damage. Mystic armor is the same thing, but for spells. So you can actually have like spell armor as well, which is pretty cool. And by the way, that's up to 8th circle. So in the companion book, they take all the disciplines to level of circle 15. Yep. And that's where you can get some real crazy, over the top stuff, right? So what we're looking at here is basically like levels 1 through 10 in D&D terms, which again, I love. But that's it. That's the whole class. I mean, that's it. Obviously there's a bunch of talents here, some of which are unique to the weaponsmith, some of which get shared by a couple different, a lot of classes have access to melee weapons. Some classes do not, but I don't know if anybody else gets forge weapon.
I don't believe so.
Yeah. So I don't know if they they used to have, I thought they used to have like maybe in 1st edition, there's like a table that showed you, what it was. But, so in any case, it's, in some cases a talent, and that's another thing too. There's like an element there of party billing, and hey, we could both take this talent. Who should take this talent? Maybe we should both take a talent. Derek want to know, is there a spot show armor flaw? There sure is, buddy. At 7th circle, you get access to the spot armor flaw. Hey! Well, that one worked, Ben.
Ben a tip $15, testing to see if this works. Smile, nothing to add, just thanks for the expert guests. Have Wild Sea in a bit, but we'll catch the VOD.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, Ben's been playing Wild Sea, which is honestly near the top of the list of games that I think is one of the best designed and most beautiful games ever, and I just don't know when I'm going to be able to play it. The other one is pending. All right, Ben. Well, you know what, Ben? Thank you so much for that. But yeah, Ben's going to be on next week, speaking of experts. And I absolutely love having people who are passionate about games. Again, a lot of people think Night's Last Call is like, oh, Derek likes games. Like, there are people in my Discord who buy more games than me. So, who have bigger collections than me. We did a survey of how many items people had in their drive-through RPG library. And it was like none, 1 to 9, 10 to 20, 21 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, 200 plus. And I was like, okay, that should be good enough. And I put myself at 100 to 200, being like, oh, I'm not at the 200 plus, but I'm at the 100, 200. And then we had like 14 people or 15 people out of like the 100 or 150 active people who voted for 200 plus. And they're like, we need a whole other order of magnitude. I need 1,000 plus. It's just crazy. Anyways,
yeah.
Spot armor flaw, but thank you, Ben. I appreciate your support, and Donnie does too. Spot armor flaw. So action simple. This basically means yes, you can finally do this in combat. Spot armor flaw is actually, I believe this means you can do this and still like attack.
Well, I mean, yes, there's three types of actions, right?
Okay.
And simple is one of them. Yeah. So
Fr-
you could
it's free,
spot armor
free, simple, and standard.
standard. Yeah.
Yeah. So spot armor flaw is it takes 1 point of damage. It's called strain. So you can't use it infinitely. There is a slight cost. You make a rank plus perception. You detect weaknesses in a character's armor by making a spot flaw test against the higher of either the target or their armor's mystical defense. So you're literally looking into the magical weave of this character's armor and looking for, because it's your power against the defense of this character. If successful, you see any flaws in the armor and get a +2 bonus to damage test. That doesn't mean +2 damage. That means +2 steps. For against target for each success scored on the spot armor flaw test. That means if you beat them, you get +2. But if you beat them by 5, you get +4. If you beat them by 10, you get +6. And remember, your weapon is probably already forged up. So you could actually see how the weaponsmith can be this uber warrior, because they just it's like Neo, where he stops the bullets. It's like that's the weaponsmith. It's crazy, but that's what a crafter is in this game. And again, it lasts a number of rounds equal to your rank in this. So as you get higher level, it's going to basically last 5, 6, 7 rounds. Essentially the whole fight. Very cool. And yes, it says skill use no. That means that yes, no, you can't just use this for normie. So in a game like this, would a character without a specific discipline be able to attempt a thing? In this case, spot armor flaw, no. But if we look at
like a void blow, that's a simple one, right?
Yeah, shield bash. Okay.
Shield bash.
Yeah. You do not have to be, the magical grand poobah master of the universe in order to use shield bash, right? You can now, granted, as a adept, right, you can learn shield bash much easier, much quicker. And the description I always use is like Neo learning in the Matrix, right? The adept is able to magically learn these talents. It's why it's quicker, faster. It only takes like 15 minutes or something like that, or 100 minutes, like an hour. And your character literally concentrates, and it's not quite the 15 seconds it is in the Matrix, but you could think of them sort of magically learning this talent. But someone could go and learn this as a mundane skill. It would take a lot longer and it would be less efficient, but you could learn it, even if your character didn't have shield bash.
And it's more difficult, so there's more legend points that you have to spend to learn it. But
yeah. And it goes without saying that Earthdawn came out in 93 or 94, I think. We didn't start playing it to 99, which is also the year that The Matrix came out. So for us, my understanding of the Earthdawn is almost synonymous with my understanding of The Matrix, right? And right down to the when at the end, when Neo can see the Matrix, even though he's in the real world, but he can see that's to me, that's like astral sensing, right? Like you can see these things, and the way that they can see the Matrix and go, I see brunette, I see blonde, I see redhead, right? Like that's to me like what these characters are doing. They're able to see the magical pattern of the world and manipulate it and twist it and change it and weave it into themselves and literally rewrite the magical essence of who they are. And in this case, it's diegetic, because the way they do that is with legend points. And it's literally the world basically going, you're becoming more important, so you kind of have to be more of a badass.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet.
That's funny because we started playing in 95, I think.
So early.
And I've never made that cognitive leap.
Oh, okay.
I've never done that analogy of it being like the Matrix, but that's hilarious, because now that I won't be able to not do it now. Absolutely. But yeah, it makes total sense.
And the same way, by the way, Donnie mentioned avoid blow, which is quite basically just dodge, right? You avoid injury by dodging or parrying blows against them, right? And it basically lets you make a opposed check against somebody attacking you, right? Now, this is a mundane skill. And if you think about this as a mundane skill, you're imagining somebody, dodging out of the way or, parrying a blow. When I think of somebody who has avoid blow as a talent, who has a high rank of avoid blow, I'm absolutely thinking of Neo Bullet Time, right? Because they are literally in my mind, they are slowing down, time, and they're doing some crazy dodging stuff. Because that's, I mean, to get to that level is so it's like it's a mundane thing done so crazily that it becomes magical, right? And that's what I like about it. Derek says, ironically, I have a Matrix hack of Earthdawn that I wrote like 15 years ago. Well, there you go. There's just
I
you.
guess I'm the only person that didn't make that jump. Never mind.
And Benjamin says, everyone I try to pitch Earthdawn to goes, oh, it's fantasy Fallout, but I can't think of it in those terms when it came first. When did the first Fallout? Oh yeah, this came out in '94. Yeah, so yeah, Fallout's like, I mean, Fallout's fairly old, but I mean, Fallout's just post-apocalyptic. I mean, this is just post-apocalyptic fantasy. The difference is that it's kind of, it's not like post-apocalyptic and the world's a wasteland, right? The world is still dangerous. The world, but the world is full of these pockets of light. And I cannot stress this enough. One of the things that I always talk about 4th edition D&D that did so well was 4th edition D&D got rid of the mega campaign settings that are completely explored from sea to shining sea, where every strip of land is in some country that has a functioning government. 4th edition said, we want to create a world where there are points of light, places of civilization, places where you can go to, but between them are these vast stretches of darkness, of unknown, of danger, of potential discovery, because that is a world ripe for adventure. So while in Earthdawn, you have places like, Thorol or, Vivane or whatever, Sky Point, these places of they might not be the nicest places, but they're places of, of order, of civilization. The vast majority of the world is sort of this, unknown place. And it's ripe for adventure and ripe for discovery and ripe for, dungeon crawling, because everybody went into dungeons called caves and probably died with all of their stuff.
Yeah, I think there was a question earlier from Vince the Zebras, like, what kind of adventures do you do in Earthdawn? And that's it. You're going and trying to find those points of light, and half the time they're not really all that lit. Right. You could be opening up a cairn that's been corrupted from the very beginning, or it just died out, or what have you.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think that the game has, look, it's got hit points and armor and, melee weapons, and there's fighting and there's monsters and there's orcs and there's, there's nasty things to fight. But the game, quite frankly, can and will have pretty strong political elements. Like Donnie was mentioning, you might be being sent to go and, they've just discovered in an archive that there was a Kaer that, that they think might have survived, and they want you to go and make like first contact, right? And maybe they aren't corrupted by the horrors, and maybe they aren't all dead. Maybe you just need to like talk to them, and maybe they are having some sort of internal problem, right? Because they've been locked up for 500 years or whatever it is. So, there's kind of like a social adventure there as well. Some of the people want to, rejoin, and they, they're like, we need their resources, or we need them to join us, and otherwise they're going to fall to the attackers, and then that would be bad. So like, some group wants to join them and there's one faction that wants to rejoin the world. There's another faction that wants to, re-swear allegiance to the big bad evil of Thera, right? And so you have to convince the town to sort of do the right thing. And if you've ever seen Star Trek: The Next Generation, there's a lot of episodes that are basically just them meeting people and trying to solve, local problems and then come out the other side. I mean, that is a strong element of Earthdawn.
You could totally play Earthdawn as an episodical RPG if you wanted to. I mean, it didn't have to have some super overarching storyline that,
Right. In fact, one of the things that we actually used to say at the time, we were coming from D&D, is we said, man, this game is sort of set up to be like the ultimate dungeon crawler. You've got these underground structures, Kaers that were, corrupted and lost, and they're everywhere. And so it's like perfect. But we're like, man, but our characters are they almost feel like they're too cool, to be just like going into some dungeon, like they should be, the heroes of the land. And you will be if you keep playing, obviously. But, I do think the characters feel, I don't know. I think they feel a little bit more capable to me than, at least at the time, D&D character. I mean, this was AD&D 2nd edition, so, but yeah, Derek says, Earthdawn was a lot of Kaer delving and fighting imperialists for my home group back in the day. That feels about right for that feels par for the course, because that's the other element about this, right? This land was once under the iron thumb of an oppressive foreign empire. And while the scourge, where, you know, the apocalypse happened, was bad, what it did do is kind of give everybody a taste of freedom. And obviously the Imperials weren't able to, you know, keep them under their rule. And when they came back out to this new land, they were like, hey, look, we're free. You know, we can do whatever we want. And people have liked that. Well, you know, after, I don't know how long it is in the game, 30 years or, you know, whatever, something, that empire survived and starts to show back up and says, hey, remember us? You know, maybe they're, and maybe it's kind of like a bad cop, good cop thing, you know, where it's like, remember how much we helped you? But if you say no, we're going to kill you. You know, it's like this kind of, this interesting sort of dynamic there as well. Let's see. So that's just one class or one discipline. You know, somebody mentioned like, you know, what about a melee character? So let's take a look at the warrior, right? Just real quick, you know, you can see here. Well, you can see that one of their basic abilities is wood skin. They quite literally, you know, basically cast bark skin on themselves. You know, if we look higher up here, you can see they get things like air dance, which basically lets them like skim around the battlefield, hovering inches above the ground and moving at like lightning fast speeds and like, you know, having hyper mobility, not really flying, but sort of more like hovering. So yeah, you know, the warrior is, you know, and then they eventually get earth skin. They also get temper flesh, right? So that's an example of a talent that the weaponsmith gets, but the warrior gets it too. And then they get,
you know, I point out, just to point out, you can multi-discipline in this system as well. Everything costs more for your second discipline or your third discipline or your fourth discipline, because the narrative is that these disciplines they're a lifestyle. They're not just a day job type thing. So, but you can multi-discipline if there's no weaponsmith in your party and you really need one, right?
But it's a much bigger deal than say in 5th edition or 3rd edition D&D, where you just go, hey, I'm leveling up, I'm just going to take this. You know, I've never mentioned it before, but I'm going to be a warlock now. Like that's not.
No, you can't do that.
Yeah, that's not what it is. It's a much more involved process to that end. I should also note fun thing about the warrior. You can see at 8th circle, they get second attack. So that's another thing about this game, which is that, and if we look at second attack, you make an additional attack, and it even costs hit point damage to do it to yourself. You know, you have to take strain. This game is kind of like a one and done thing. Like, you know, you just basically make one attack, you know, and there might be a couple of talents that let you do this, you know, that lets you get an extra weapon in there. But for the most part, you know, you're making basically one attack. So to be able to make 2 attacks is big game. You know, it's on your turn, you're basically in that one kind of standard action. Let's see here. Ben says, I've been reading Flames of Freedom, which is the sort of revolutionary wars Zweihander, I don't want to call it a hack, but setting. That game has 84 separate professions. Well, that's an interesting question, Donnie. What is, so we just did all classes re-ranked for Pathfinder 2.
Yep.
And there's 2 classes which just came out that we didn't do. And then there's 4 classes that are now in playtest. So there's 6 classes coming sometime in the next, you know, year. And the game's already at like 23 or 24 classes. So we'll say next year it'll be 30. How many classes in a class-based game is enough? Or is too much?
Well, I can tell you 84 is too much.
Now, to be fair, he did say they are professions. So
professions, that's true. That's true. You know, when you start getting into that baker's dozen, 20 range, you know, in most systems, I'm starting to be like, okay, well, it's just a wizard that doesn't have to memorize spells. Right. Whereas
when you start describing a class by using another class, but saying, but like this. Yeah.
But what I will say is Earthdawn. I mean, it's got a fair number, and we got some crazy ones. Air Sailor is one of the disciplines, one of the default disciplines. Beastmaster, you know. But what Earthdawn does well is that there's unique powers, unique talents in that discipline that make it attractive for somebody to take. But yeah, you start getting up close to 20. I just don't know. If it's.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the classic 3rd edition had 11, Pathfinder 2nd edition had 12 in the original core book, and for me, that feels like, you know, a very good number.
That's good,
more or less, you know.
Yeah.
I think when you start getting too high, it's just because, you know, they start stepping on too many toes, and it's basically like, this is exactly like this class, but there's a little bit of a difference, and you're like,
right.
You know, I don't really quite get it. And just to be clear, in this game, the classes that it has available are the Air Sailor, which used to not be a core class. It was only in the companion. I think they added it because they wanted to have a not bad guy airship person, because there's a Sky Raider.
Yeah.
But you have the Air Sailor, the Archer. By the way, I should note that they're not common, but like airships are a thing in Earthdawn. So, in fact, Earthdawn is the name, or was the name, of an airship that was launched to sort of do the first, you know, kind of reconnoiter or scouting of the world. Archer is next, and they kind of, you know, do what they say on the tin. Beastmaster is your pet class.
Yep.
Cavalryman is your mounted class. Elementalist is one of your 4 magicians. They're basically your fire, earth, air, wood, elemental, you know, fireball, flying type, you know, blaster, but also water and wind and stuff. The illusionist is another one of your magicians who can cast spells. They're your sort of enchanter, charmer, illusioner. The Nethermancer is their version of the necromancer, but it's more like the Nethermancer deals with other planes and spirits. Yeah, not so much like, I mean, they do have undead type stuff, but it's more like, yeah, like the beyond the veil, you know, beyond this mortal world. There is the Scout, which is, you know, kind of your ranger, tracker, hunter type person. There's the Sky Raider, which is basically airship pirates. The Swordmaster, who is your sort of duelist, Kenjutsu, you know, very focused on, sure, they're a fighter, they're a warrior, but they are focused on swordplay. The Thief, who is a thief. The Troubadour, who's a bard. The Warrior, who is your all-around, all-purpose fighter type. The Weaponsmith, which we discussed. And the last of the magicians is the Wizard, who is, you know, concerned with magic itself, like the theoretical concept of magic and all the stuff about patterns and stuff like that, and you know, very academic, research-based approach to it. Yeah, the Nethermancer has some pretty nasty spells like Skin Shift, which is, by the way, like a default ability of horrors, where they rip your skin off of your body and then they shift it around your body and kind of like spin your face to the back of your skull. It's great stuff. Not necessarily super pleasant. But anyways, yeah. Benjamin says, I loved Earthdawn's presentation of classes as mythic archetypes that you have to consciously emulate. I always felt the rules could have done more with it. Like the protagonist of some of the novels is a thief whose powers leave him when he's not greedy and paranoid enough. And Benjamin, I understand why they didn't do that as a rule thing to basically, you know, the GM will tell you if you lose all your powers. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think it is something that the game does try to at least inspire without like making it a straitjacket. But you are absolutely right. Like if you're a thief discipline, you have to think like a thief and live like a thief. And if you're not being a thief, that magical ability will leave you.
I mean, that's again, it's a lifestyle. It's not just your day job.
Right. It's like, you know, it's like D&D. It's a lifestyle brand. You know, it's it's not just a class. You know, it's what is it? I'm not just the president. I'm also a client. You know, it's it's the hair club for men of RPGs. So yeah, I just find it to be a very, you know, fun and engaging game, and I think the talents are simple, but to me they're very exciting, and you know, and a lot of things just kind of feel good to do from a game systems design standpoint. I really love stuff like Avoid Blow, which you know, is basically if you have Avoid Blow, you get to make an opposed check to see if you can dodge a blow. You can only avoid a maximum number of attacks equal to your avoid blank each avoid blow rank. Now you can't do it if you're surprised or blindsided. Blindsided basically means flanked. So you have to be able to see them coming. And obviously at low levels, you can only do this once or twice. But at reasonable high levels, once you had 5 ranks in avoid blow, you might do this every time, right? Why wouldn't you? Well, because you do have this cost of strain. And I think that they made a really good pricing on the strain. It's not so high that you feel like you'll never do it, but it's also meaningful because the hit points don't get that high. So it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, I don't feel bad using this, but you're like, but hey, I took more damage from my avoid blow that fight than I took from people attacking me. And so like there's this kind of, fun, like they did a really good job of balancing how much damage you take with the strain.
They did. Yeah, that economy works really well.
And it's basically all the things that you go, well, why wouldn't someone just do this every time?
Right.
That's why.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, why? So wait. Once I get second attack, I can just make a second attack and it's just like it's like a full free attack and it does just as much damage and there's no multiple attack penalty. Yes. But every time you do that, you take 2 strain and it will add up, So Derek says you get to a point with strain where you're like, do I want to go under 15 hit points? Exactly. So, it lets people use their hit points as a resource. And I think it's done particularly well. And it's done very well. All right.
We're talking about avoid blow. Should we talk about knacks?
Sure, we can talk about knacks. I don't know if they're in this book.
They're not in it. We'll touch on them briefly because you won't be able to pull much up.
Right. Because I don't have that PDF, but
right. So knacks are if you have a talent and you can find somebody that can teach you another way to perform that talent or an additional way to perform that talent, then it's called a knack. It doesn't cost you anything to learn, or to use, you just have to find the trainer. So for avoid blow, we're talking about it, right? In the companion, there's 3 knacks for avoid blow. So you could do the normal avoid blow, but you might also want to do arrow cutting, which is when you spend an additional success from an avoid blow to, destroy a missile weapon. Because archers, for example, can just recall their arrows when they've been fired and they miss, right? You could there's another knack called roll with the punches, or another one called redirect attack. And in that one where, if you have additional successes on your on a void blow test, then you can turn that attack around on somebody else at a penalty.
Yeah. So they're like feats for an individual power or an individual talent. Yeah. Talent. So it's like, there's like everybody, the standard avoid blow, but then this is in the companion, it's an optional rule. If you want more mechanical detail, your character can start gaining these additional mechanical things that sort of really highlight it. And it doesn't come for free. Like Donnie was saying, you have to get an additional success. So if the DC was 14, you need to get a 19. Right. Yep. And so the idea is like, if you roll really well, instead of just being like, well, I guess I avoided it really well, you're like, no. I counterattacked. I cut their arrow in half, rather than just simply avoiding it,
And again, these have to be learned, right? Somebody has to teach you how to do this. It's not an automatic thing. So again, then feeding into the narrative of finding a higher circle, warrior that knows avoid blow and knows this knack.
Yeah, and there's almost kind of an idea that like these talents themselves are sort of part of this, almost like there's almost like every warrior knows this talent. It's almost like there's like the universe itself knows what a warrior is, and like you're tapping into that warrior power source. Knacks are sort of like, hey, some people though they've sort of figured out a way to use something the way maybe it wasn't originally intended, like they figured out a way to sort of push it ahead. So the companion, I think, is an excellent book. I mean, it has got a whole bunch of different systems. It expands the game from Circle 8 up to Circle 15. I think it has stuff in there about like questers. I want to say maybe Lightbringers.
It brings in all the enchanting rules.
Oh, sure.
It goes into more detail on threat items, which is so fun. The idea of masks are brought in. So the companion is an excellent book. It's every bit as good as the player's guide. But just to kind of wrap up on the knacks, though, I mean, Yeah, they are very cool. They add a lot of flavor, and a lot of the stuff in the companion book is flavor. But it's flavor with with purpose. So.
Mhm. Peter says, I still love the way you build your character. You can level up your attributes, your skills, you can buy rerolls, dice with your XPs, but you can also use them to connect yourself to items, to people, to places. Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, it really is just a currency that your character earns by doing cool shit, right? AKA legendary shit. And so they're called legend points. They're not called experience points, they're called legend points. And basically, like, you know, as you become more important to this world, you are able to sort of enhance your pattern and tie your pattern into the world around you. You can connect it to, as Peter was saying, people, places, things. You can connect you can thread weave to each other, right? You can strengthen other people in your party with these kind of like magical links.
You can thread weave to an opponent.
I didn't even know you could do that.
If you find part of their one of their pattern items.
Oh, okay.
So we had a
and to be clear, a pattern item is basically like something that's like really important to you. And so
Yes.
it becomes part of your identity, right? So like if you're a warrior who's known for using the great two-handed flaming axe wolf sword, that might become a part of your pattern because it's so important to your identity as a magical construct. So if somebody can get to that item, they can actually get to you.
Yeah, so we had an adventuring group that was trying to. They had a group that they were going after, and they found out that their leader always drank at this same pub. And they went to the pub to investigate and found that he had a favorite mug that he always used when he was there. It was a minor pattern item of his, very, very minor. But then they could weave against his pattern and give themselves pluses to defense or give them extra steps of damage, right? So that was,
and it's done in the game like that. And it's just, it's fun. I mean, like for me, and I've said this before, like part of fantasy to me is magic. And this is a setting in which it's like, kind of the part of it. So, I think it's so awesome. Ben, thank you for stopping by. Ben won't be here Thursday because we'll be talking about Pathfinder 2, but Ben will be here next Tuesday when we're going to be talking about the troubleshooters with him. So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Benjamin, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but yeah, there's no requirement you could be a low circle warrior and you just have the most basic talents, but man, you've got them at the highest ranks. And so you're like, I don't do much, but what I do, I do well, and other people might say, I really want to try to get higher circles and I want to spread my points out and I want to try to meet the criteria to get to second circle, to get to third circle, to get the higher access, spells or talents or whatever. Other people might say, I'm good.
And I actually really don't like the way that like Pathfinder 2nd edition does like their attributes, right? One of the things I loved about the old White Wolf system was that you could level up your attributes, right? You could level up, and there's not a whole lot of systems that really let you do that kind of built in from the very beginning.
Yeah. And again, it also makes sense.
Yes,
right?
It does.
Your character is quite literally making themselves stronger magically, right? Like they are, using the power of their growing legend to sort of rewrite their magical DNA. And it's like, I'm tougher, I'm stronger. What does an ability boost mean in D&D? I don't know. One day you just got stronger. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's what happens in this game. Yeah, but in this game, that's exactly what happened, like in the context of the game. So I know that it seems like
rewriting your own pattern.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And that is something, that's what makes you an adept. Right. That's what makes you special. Ordinary people can't do that. And so while everybody has a pattern, only adepts have the ability to sort of thread weave and they do that through the context of being this philosophical discipline, So it really is a game that if you don't like the flavor, it's the mechanics might really call to you, but if you don't like that flavor and you don't like that idea of what I call fantasy post-apocalyptic matrix, then it's not going to work for you. If you want to really super grounded and like everybody's just trudging through the mud and it takes, 97 years to train up to use one additional weapon, like not the game, don't
go into marketing, man.
Yeah. And I also think that, and this is, it's not the last thing I want to say, but it is like kind of the thing. to me, Earthdawn, is it the best? Yes. Earthdawn is the best game at recognizing that this is a fantasy world of magic and wizards and warriors, but it's being played as a fucking role-playing game. And so it instead of like trying to like excuse that or like go around that, it leans into that. Why are there dungeons? You know, remember this game came out in 1993, but like, why are there just these dungeons everywhere filled with treasure? Well, this game basically goes, here's why. And it's part of our game, right? Why do these characters just gain these abilities all of a sudden? Here's why. And it's part of our game. Like it does the things that everybody does anyways. And it just says, look, we understand this is a role-playing game, but that doesn't mean we have to hand wave it. It doesn't mean we have to ignore it. It doesn't mean we have to come up with some really lame excuse. We can lean into that. We understand that we're not writing this for the next great fantasy novel. We understand this isn't a movie or TV show. This is a game system that is being used for people playing a role-playing game. And we understand that because of that, it has to work a certain way. Like, I gained arbitrary points and I leveled up and I circled up. Well, okay, let's make that mean something in the context of our system. Let's make that mean something in the context of our setting. And to my mind, no other game does it better than this.
That's the answer to your question on most of these streams, right? One of the questions that you commonly ask: what is this system trying to do, and does it do it right? And that's exactly the answer.
Mm-hmm. You know, because everything else there is like, oh, it's got stuff to attack things and whatever, you know. But for the most part, this is a game that is trying to, be a role-playing game and let that sort of guide how the world works so that it makes sense. And you're like, you don't have to apologize for your game. Like we said, when you start leveling up, your character starts with a certain number of hit points. It's not a lot, a couple sword thrusts, you're dead.
Yeah.
Just like real life. But when you start gaining circles, you gain durability. You don't gain it's hit points from the ether. My character, I don't know, it just suddenly can be stabbed multiple times now. That doesn't make any sense. Well, hit points are more than that. It's luck and it's the thing. Then how come they heal one a day, like back in the day? You're like, no. They represent like this, like your fate and fortune. That's why when you take a long rest, you get them all back. Then what is Cure Light Wounds doing? If I'm not wounded, then what am I being cured? This game says, no, like, your character is kind of magically reinforced. Again, not to put a Matrix point on this, but in the second Matrix movie, which is not nearly as good, obviously, but in the second Matrix movie, at the very beginning, Neo is attacked by the Merovingians group of henchmen, and they're fighting in this stairway, and they've all got all these melee weapons that they're pulling off of the walls. And Neo blocks like a big, huge two-handed Chinese sword with his hand, like he parries it with his hand. And when the guy pulls it away, like he's got a line of blood. Because, he's the one, but he's still, a human at some level. And, like the Merovingians, like, see, he couldn't be killed, and then whatever. But like, that's kind of the scale that we're talking about here. Like, if your character has a high durability rating because they're a high circle, they might literally get hit by a sword and, stop it with their hand. And, it might hurt, it might draw blood, but they're kind of a superhero, Yeah. There's more than one Matrix movie. No, I'm just theorizing that if they were to have made a second one and it were to include a scene like that's what it would look like. Also, I think the second movie gets unfairly criticized. I don't think it's great, but the third one is not great. It's not good.
Have you seen the most recent one?
I don't see Donnie, I don't watch movies anymore. I leave that to you guys, to watch your bad movies, your Rebel Moons, and your.
That was an exercise in drinking. That's what that was.
The only movies I see now are the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies because my friends and I have just gone to all of them forever, and it's just a thing now that we do just to have an excuse to see each other. Otherwise, we wouldn't see each other, and those have been predominantly horrifyingly disappointing. So, it is what it is. But yeah, Matrix came attached to a DDD player back in the day. It was the reason to buy the player. Do you mean the Animatrix? I've actually never seen the Animatrix.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
It's fun.
It's a movie or it's a show?
Animation.
So you've seen the Animatrix, but you never connected Earthdawn and the Matrix.
No, I haven't. Again, I already had my brain pattern in to what I thought Earthdawn and
you had to make sense of it without the advantage of having seen the Matrix, right?
Yes, because I'm old as sin, so that is why. It makes sense now.
Okay,
and it'll probably ruin it for me, but yeah, it makes sense.
So yeah, are there any questions, or is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about? Donnie, if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, things that you want to talk about, we can talk about Rebel Moon.
Yeah, I don't know. I need Boothby for that. No, I mean, I think we've covered a lot. I mean, if we were to start talking about some of the other subsystems, thread weaving to items and the way spellcasting works, I think that's another stream in and of itself.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit, right? We kind of said it's kind of like, it's not Vancian, right? You don't have spell slots. Your character basically walks around with astral spells that they can empower with magical threads of energy, and when they do that, the spell becomes a reality, and they can do that again and again and again and again as long as they keep weaving threads to it.
And they keep those in spell matrices. Yes. So there's your matrix reference again.
Derek says maybe look at a thread weapon of some kind. I don't know if that's in the core book. It might be in like the GM guide. I only have the PDF for the player guide. Magical equipment, common magic items. Okay, here we go. Let's see here. I don't know if we have any magic items in here.
I have the PDF, but I would have to share.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Which would create a disruption of epic.
Because you have to do right.
Yeah, it would mess up all of our stuff.
Let me talk about one.
Okay,
if that's okay. Okay, yeah. So, let me pick a good one. Let's just do. No, I want to do a big one. Okay, so we're going to talk about a thread item, which is, magic items, for better or worse. When you have a magic item, right? Especially if it's a named magic item, it has a pattern. That pattern you can weave threads into to unlock additional powers of that weapon, of that item. And so in order to do so, you have to sometimes learn certain things about that item to understand its pattern better, right? And this might be a really good reason to have a weaponsmith in your party to help you start learning these knowledges. And so I'm looking at one here. It's called Devastator Spear. Okay, so a typical magical spear. It's thread rank 1. So in order to weave that first thread into this weapon, you have to learn a key knowledge. And that key knowledge is the owner must learn the name of the spear. Okay, pretty simple. Weaponsmith can probably tell you that right off the bat. Maybe you do a little research and you find it. The effect of weaving that thread is that the spear damage is step 5. So it ups that to step 5. Thread rank 2, if you can weave another thread to it, has no key knowledge. You don't have to do anything. You already got the first basics down. Was that you get a +1 on your attack test with the spear. Right?
So +1 step.
+1 step, yes. And that +1, means that you might get extra successes, which means more damage. Thread rank 3, you have to have a key knowledge again. And this one is the owner must learn the name of the first victim slain by the spear. So we're getting very specific. You got to learn the first, and that effect is you get +1 physical defense. And then the 4 is, again, just going up. And so for minor items, it might not have very many threads.
Right.
The key knowledges might be very simple. Whereas when you get to artifacts, right, there might be 8 thread ranks. In fact, this particular one, this spear, goes up to 7 thread ranks. And the key knowledge for the 7th one is the owner must learn the name of the horror whose blood was used in the construction of the spear. Right. So this is, again, this is the system going, you're going to have to go learn this. You're going to have to go, you might have to go do some dungeon diving, or
right.
And the other thing that might happen on these is you might have to perform a deed, and I can't remember which item it is.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
There's one sword, I believe, as an example, where you had to find the original creators and like ancestors, not ancestors, they're current living children.
Their descendants.
Right? Descendants. God, I can't think of the word. You got to find their current living descendants, and you have to offer the sword back to them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you can. Yeah.
And I think the key thing, I like to talk about, game play patterns, right, and game design. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about, it's cool, it's fun, it's very flavorful. But what it does is it demands and pushes proactivity from your player bases, because they're player characters, right? They want they're players. They want their magic item to be more powerful, right? But what this does is it says, look, this isn't somebody else's quest. This is your quest. And, maybe the other people in the party don't care, so there's kind of like this, like, will you help me, travel to, I found this descendant and, they live on the other side of the continent and we have to make this great journey. Will you travel with me? And it pushes players to be more proactive, because they just need to go do legendary shit to get legendary points, to become more powerful. They need to learn these knowledges. They need to visit these places. They need to accomplish these deeds. And that is coming from the players, not from the game master. And that's what makes it, I think, so such a good mechanic, because it's not passive. Magic items are very passive in D&D. You get them and you have them, and then that's it. Even back in the day, there was a little bit more like, you'd get a magic item, the GM wouldn't tell you what it was. You had to like experiment with it and do trial and error. And even the original first edition DMG talks about the player having a +1 sword, not knowing it's a +1 sword. So the GM has to remember, like, secretly every time the player tells them a number, it's actually one higher, like, until they figure it out or whatever, which is fine. But in this game, they go, no, you don't even get the magical power. You have to earn it. You have to put in some sweat equity, whether that's a deed or whether that's learning knowledges. And it's also shifting. You can only weave to a rank equal to your thread weaving rank, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right, Donnie?
That's correct.
So what that means is that the item can really grow with you, because if you could give somebody an artifact at the beginning of the campaign. They are the legendary descendant of, Excalibur. Okay, well, their thread weaving rank is 1. So, and to do the deed might be like, you have to slay a horror, something crazy. So like they have it, and they might earn those ranks over the course of many, 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 many months of play. But you don't have to worry about them like out leveling the item, but you can give it to them and not worry about it being busted, because, they have to put in the time, they have to put in the effort, they have to put in the legend points. And that means that it kind of is a self-adjusting problem. And that's why I say it's a game, it's a system, and it's a world that are like designed to be good for a role-playing game, like designed for the specific problems and the specific nuances that we encounter, because this isn't just a Brandon Sanderson novel or a Robert Jordan novel. It's not just a Conan the Barbarian book or movie. It's a role-playing game, and it's a role-playing game first. So a lot of the things that are in this game aren't just in there because they're cool. They're in there because it makes it a better role-playing game. That's, I think, what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Am I going to see the Lord of the Rings anime War of the Rohirrim movie? I don't know. I don't like anime, but I do like Lord of the Rings. But I dislike the Hobbit movies, and I stopped watching Rings of Power after like 3 episodes because I said I would rather stab myself in the face. So I really
you don't dislike all anime, right? I mean, you watched Lodos.
I like Lotus War.
Yeah.
I like like late 80s, early 90s anime. That's more my style.
You like your anime on a laser disc.
Yes. And I mean, I remember my uncle had Lotus War on a laser disc. It was awesome.
Yeah, I had a friend that had it too. That's how I got into it.
That's awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember my first copy was like this bootleg, like it was like Chinese bootleg record of Lotus War VHS cassettes. It was great.
I still have it's downstairs right now. I still have the complete set record of Lotus War, 6 cassettes sitting down there because I ain't got nothing to play them on.
Of course. Yeah. Mine was bootleg, but same principle.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then, yeah, Derek said, and then when you get the +2 item, you throw away your +1 item. I like items that grow with you. Absolutely. And we didn't get into this, but part of the reason that things become magical is because you use them to do something badass, right? Like just like you become more powerful because you're doing these legendary things, your totally mundane acts that like one shots a dragon or something like that. People are like, well, like the world itself goes, oh, that's a dragon slaying axe now, right? Like it's becoming legendary because you used it to do legendary things. And like that's awesome.
We had a troubadour that had a sword.
Okay.
That his whole purpose for being, in the adventuring party was just to tell people about his sword, right? So he would go out and he would do stuff with it, but he would spend just as much time in town, like praising this sword to anybody that would listen to it because he was trying to grow its power.
Right. And you're like, that seems like some cheesy thing that a player would do. Yes, and in this world, it makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Which is so great. So yeah, are there any other questions? I know Derek asked about like maybe taking a look at the thread weapons. So that was kind of like us talking about thread weapons. Thank you for that, Donnie. Maybe talk about the horrors a little bit. I mean, they're just supernatural. They're not demons. That's over. They're very Cthulhu-esque. Yeah. They're from another realm. They feed on pain and misery and death. They're just like abject horrors. And they usually come with a bevy of abilities that make them very scary. And the most potent ability that they have is called the horror mark. And if you're marked by a horror it'll last for a year and a day. And they basically form a psychic connection to you. And they can haunt your dreams and whisper into your thoughts. And, they can manipulate you even from far distances. And so once you're horror marked, it's like you're kind of like on a ticking time bomb until something goes wrong, And so they are like the great pervasive threat of this world. But it's not as simple as saying they're evil, because it's not like team evil. They are just like, beyond the mind of mortality of how uncaring and cruel they are. So it's a very, Cthulhu-esque kind of style to them.
Yeah, and in the Game Master Guide, I mean, the chapter on the horrors is 50 pages, right? But like a good portion of that is taken up with talking about their abilities and their skills and things like that. And then they go over some minor horrors. And then, in some of the other source books, they'll talk about a horror or two. But I think they really kind of leave it up to the Game Master to, have fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
What would really freak your players out?
Right. I mean, the idea is that these things are like always scary. Is kind of
Yes.
I think what they really try to go for. You're not supposed to be like body slamming horrors and like stacking them up like cordwood. Like that's not.
Well, they killed 3 gods. Well, they didn't kill them; they drove them mad. They drove 3 of them mad. So that's how people they are.
But there is kind of a hierarchy of horrors, and and Derek's mentioning how some of the horrors are named. My understanding, if I'm right, is that the horrors themselves like don't have names. It's that people named them, and that made them more powerful. There's kind of this like weird like by name givers can make things more important because we can name things, and the pattern sort of says, oh, okay, that thing's important, and that means it can draw from that and gain strength from that. So Derek said, my first fight against a worm skull was very memorable. I think everybody has fought a worm skull at some point in time in Earthdawn. I know my group did as well, but it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And I don't know if anybody died, but I know one person got like, what's that? There's that. I think it's Shift Skin that does like a freakish number of wounds. Like right. So the game has hit points, but it also has wounds, which means like you actually got messed up. And I think Skin Shift like does a number of wounds equal to the rank in Skin Shift or something like that, because it detaches the person's skin from their muscle and bone, and then it just ripples it around their body. So again,
it does. No armor reduces it.
Sure.
and inflicts 1 wound on the victim for each success.
There you go. So I was pretty good
You're
there.
pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close. So obviously this, powerful horror comes in and skin shifts you for 4, gets 4 successes on you or whatever, and just rips your face off and turns it to the back, and your body's like just oozing blood from every orifice because you're being just ripped apart, at a molecular level. They're nasty things. Another thing, a lot of people are surprised to hear this. Everyone's like, Derek only likes Tolkien. I actually love the way the races are presented in Barsaive and in Earthdawn. You have the dwarves and the elves, and they're pretty dwarvy and they're pretty elfy, but the dwarves are the kind of the common race, if you will. But they got rid of halflings and gnomes because those things suck anyways, right? And they replaced them with Scrang, and they replaced them with Windlings and Obsidian, which admittedly is not the coolest name, but and I love them. And, one of my favorite characters that I ever had was the Scrang Swordmaster, which I thought was awesome. And I had dreams of him like dueling with his like tail with a prehensile tail. And the reason I love them is because they have a place in the world. They're not just like, hey, here's another 20 ancestries that we're just dropping into the world, and we're supposed to all pretend like this is normal and that they've been here the whole time. It's like, this isn't Mos Eisley, every character, every race has sort of a place, and I like that, and when 3rd edition, like when Monty Cook released Arcana Unearthed, it had some really weird ancestries and species and races, and I really like those because, again, they had a place in the world. Now, Derek doesn't like Windlings. I don't know why, but
yeah, they're very divisive.
Really interesting. Is it because they can fly, or
well, they're also the ones that can perceive astral, like just by default, and so they're kind of cool in that aspect. But some people don't like, the miniature flying creature.
Oh,
and some people like trolls and trench coats. So
right, that's true. But I do have trolls. They are playable. Orcs are playable. What else is there? Is there one other one? There's Obsidian, Scrang, Woodlings, and then there's Orcs, Trolls, Dwarves, Elves, Humans. That might be it.
I believe that's it.
All right, I got the book here. Unless they added one in like the,
No, there was one that they added later on, but I think it was Orc that they added later on.
Dwarves, Elves, Humans, Obsidian, Orcs, Trolls, Scrang, and Windlings.
No, it wasn't. Okay. Yeah. There was one that they thought that they added later, but maybe not.
Derek doesn't like the level 1 flights. Yeah, are pit traps so important to people that the flight, Derek, that's hilarious. My buddy Dan, who played our Earthdawn campaign, he used to play with me in high school. He went away to college and never came back, so I haven't played with him since high school. But my buddy Dan had a Windling cavalryman. He rode around on the back of like an eagle or something like that, and it was awesome. That's funny. I guess, it's like everybody sees this and they go, oh, that'd be really cool, But no, I mean, also, I think the Windling makes more sense in this kind of game because you're like, well, how could the Windling war? Well, number one, I just think it's funny when people go, it's crazy that this 2 foot tall thing can do so much damage to an 8 foot orc, or like a 6 foot orc or an 8 foot troll. But then no one questions when the 6 foot tall human can kill the 250 the football field length dragon, right? Like, we're all so strange how we sort of contextualize that. But the other thing is, in this game, it's not just your physical strength; it's your magical ability. Your Windling is like Ant-Man. You're small but mighty. You're packing all that power in that cavalryman charge or that warrior smash. I think most cavalryman characters who actually got played were Windlings. To be clear, yes, because then you're like, I could bring it anywhere. Like, it's a little strange to be like, I'm bringing my giant lizard mount into the dungeon, but why not? Why not? You could do hex. You could also do hex crawling. I don't know that they have rules for it, but you could probably do hex crawling in Earthdawn. Would actually be kind of cool, because there's a whole idea of like, we don't know what's out there. We want to rediscover stuff. Like, you're actually exploring. The world is changed. It's not just that, oh, everyone went into their holes. No, like the surface of the world was changed magically through the magical ravages of this magical apocalypse called the Scourge. So, maps and mapping and like learning the world. I mean, that's like a huge part of all of this, not to mention making those first contacts and discovering what happened to these cities and these citadels and these cares. And then if they have been compromised, like dealing with the baddies that might still be in there, or recovering the treasure and learning their story. There's a strong element in Earthdawn about the power of storytelling, right? Which again, to me, is very meta to the whole idea of RPGs, right? Like we are getting together to tell stories, and there's power in that and fun in that and healing in that. And there's kind of a reflection of that in Earthdawn. So to me, it's just fantastic. Now, what don't I like about Earthdawn? Well, it's a trad system. It's roll high, you succeed, you fail. So it doesn't have any sort of built-in, fail forward type mechanic. And it doesn't have any sort of narrative tools to help guarantee that you get, there's no way for the GM to be like, I'm going to spend this meta currency and make your lives more complicated and more dramatic. So it's fairly traditional in that way. I want to, would you say it requires a battle mat? Because there are ranges to things.
There are
radiuses, and
I would say it's probably better with one.
Yeah,
I mean, we've done Theater of the Mind, but I don't know. I think it's probably better with a battle mat.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's not necessarily, for some people, that's like a must. That's like an automatic. The other thing is, again, we'll talk about that. I mean, I'll be honest with it. At low levels, the steps are pretty simple. Your D8, D6, you go to D. Oh, you're like, oh, I got a plus. I'm a D10, but I got 3-step bonus. I'm rolling a D8 plus D6. That's cool. Plus, now I have 2 dice that can explode. Because remember, if you roll the max on any one die, you roll another one of that die. So the D8, D6 gives you a chance to roll 2 dice and, twice as many chances to explode. Really cool. And I have no problem with any of like this first 15 steps or so. But now, to be fair, this doesn't start happening until later in the game. But when you start getting to, 2d20 plus 2d10 or 2d20 plus d12 plus d10, like it starts to get a little silly. And I understand, it's tough to get to these ranks. It is. But like, and they're kind of there just for completeness sake. I mean, right. I mean, because 10 ranks is a lot, right? So like rolling step 15 or step 16 is a lot. So, but I will say they are a little bit clunky, and they're not necessarily completely intuitive. And granted, if you like actually using your polyhedral dice, and the other thing that is nice is this is used for everything. It's used for your damage. It's used for your attack. Your attack. Everything is in the context of this. So at least it does that. Because the worst thing about D&D is, or Pathfinder, is the game asks you to go, okay, you gotta. What is your attack bonus? Okay, now figure out all the temporary bonuses to your attack. Okay, because a lot of times in D&D, your attack bonus may never be the same for any one fight, because you're like, hey, I am attacking. Well, now I'm attacking on the flank, but now I'm attacking on the flank and it's my second attack. So it's like literally the number changes every time. Then you roll a D20, then you add that, then you have to hit their DC. Okay, now we have to do an entirely new different calculation, which is damage. So now you got to get different dice that use a different bonus, that use a different thing. At least in this game, everything uses the same step system. So I do like that. So yeah, they're clunky, but
at least it's on the character sheet. It's on the GM screen.
Right. And like I said,
yeah.
For most of your skills, you're going to be like, my perception is 4, or my strength is 4. I have 3 ranks of melee weapons. So I roll I have step 7 melee weapons. That's a D12. And most of the time you're going to roll a D12. That's pretty simple. So at least it's pretty consistent of that. And then by the time it starts getting higher, in theory, you've been playing the game for a while, so you're a little bit more, old step. But I will freely admit that yes, this could get out of pocket real quick,
Yeah.
So I'll admit that. What else? I love that you get to spend the XP rather than like level up traditionally. So I love that. Love the digest. I love the talent system. I think it's really cool. It's very simple. I love how simple the characters are, but they feel so deep, which is great. Spell casting is amazing. I do not like Vancian casting. I mean, I like it. I love it because it's part of what D&D is to me and part of what role-playing games are to me. But I do not like Vancian casting. I don't like the Dying Earth books by Jack Vance. So there's that. So this is not Vancian casting. In fact, it's more like Wheel of Time kind of casting, which I love. And I'm a big fan of weaving spells and threads of magic, and that's quite literally what this game is. So I love that.
Combat's just combat. I mean, it's
combat's just combat, kind of.
Yeah, nothing too over the top. Or
I will say that the game has these things called recoveries, which work a lot like 4th edition's healing surges, or a little bit like 5th edition's hit dice from their short rest mechanic. But you can't really use them in combat. But you can use them outside of combat to sort of restore your life. So you can self heal. Yeah, if there's a talent called Fireblood that lets you use your recovery checks in combat. Yeah. Multi-round casting kind of sucked. Not sure if that still exists in this edition. For particularly powerful spells, it can be, because you have to weave a certain number of threads to a matrix in order to cast it. Now, there are more advanced matrix which have like threads pre-woven into them, so that you might want to put those spells into those matrices. But yeah, I'm okay with that because the spells are very powerful and you have a lot of options in this game. And I'm one of those people who, as much as I don't like Vancian casting, I'm okay with the idea that the wizard isn't casting a spell every round. You know, it doesn't have to be like an MMO to me. Like, I don't want my wizard or my mage or whatever to feel like a machine, like the magic is a machine gun, you know, that I'm just like, or a semi-automatic rifle, you know, like I like that sometimes it feels like the Wheel of Time TV show, if anybody saw it. Like, for me, one of the coolest parts of like the entire show was when Emmons Field gets attacked and Moraine and Lan are defending it. And you see him have to like defend her because it's taking her a couple of moments to weave this really powerful spell that then is this huge AoE and takes them all out. And to me, I love that idea, you know, that, you know, you could, in fact, I would love to lean more into that idea rather than away from that. So yeah, I mean, if you can cast magic at will, you know, it's got to be something that you can do.
That's one of the things that I think Pathfinder really missed out on, at least early on, was, you know, those multi-actions spells that had the multi-actions.
Yeah.
You know,
Magic Missile and Heal did that, but
Horizon Thunder Spear, right? They really missed out on not a lot of them doing that.
Yeah, not as many. And I agree, Derek. I mean, there's gameplay problems with that as well, but I also I like I think there's something to be said about the character who doesn't contribute often, but when they contribute, it's game shaking. I think that can be a very legitimate strategy of play. And I think that can definitely appeal to a certain type of player. The issue is when your action's hamstrung and then you still did less damage than the fighter, you know, or something like that. That's where it becomes kind of problematic. So, but I agree with you. I mean, it could be viewed that way. Also, just don't take those spells. Just take the spells that are only like 1 thread or 2 threads and put it into an armored, you know, armored matrix or enhanced matrix. I don't remember which ones start with threads, but
enhanced has a
enhanced and armored, I think, right?
Enhanced armor. There's 4.
There's regular, split, or something like split or something dual. We're quizzing each other on our spell matrix knowledges. Let's see here. Someone in chat's probably going to type it. Derek will probably type it
before we get there.
Spell matrix. Here we go. Standard matrix. Oh, I looked at the talent. Oops. Yeah, I don't know.
Here we go. Okay, so
yeah, shared matrix, standard matrix, enhanced matrix, armored matrix, shared matrix. There we
go. Yeah.
And yes, the enhanced and armored can hold threads.
Yeah.
The shared cannot, but it does have a higher death rating, and of course can have multiple spells in it at once. He never played a high level spellcaster. I do think spellcasters are awesome. I love all of them. I think the Nethermancer is like what I want a necromancer to be, in that they're scary and weird, but not like, whoo, I'm actually super evil. The illusionist is great. The elementalist is a lot of fun, and the wizard's really cool too. So I love all 4 mages in the game. And you want no, okay. It is dating itself a little bit because things have changed and the playability has changed, and now there's weirdos who want to actually play the heal bot. But the other thing that this game fixed is there's no fucking cleric.
Nope, not a single one.
And when this game came out, trust me, when this game came out in 1994 or whatever, after 20 years of D&D, going back to 1974, the whole thing was, all right, who's gonna be the cleric? 1, 2, 3, not it. Nobody wanted to be no one wanted to be the heal bot, who just turns undead. I'm not saying the cleric was a bad class, but just people didn't want to do that. And so this game said, okay, we got rid of it. There's no cleric. There's no divine class. Now, later on, they introduced this idea of these questers who serve the passions. But even like we said, the passions are gods, but only in this like weird interdimensional sense. They're not like Zeus sitting up in Mount Olympus, they're more of like philosophical ideas that have gained energy because so many people have like expressed that emotion. They're more emotion based, right? In fact, I think they're called the passions. So it's like the passion of love, the passion of anger, or the passion of whatever. So yeah, it's really cool because like no one wanted to be a cleric. So people at FASA were like, okay, well, no cleric. We'll just get rid of it, and it's cool, Instead, every class has recoveries. And I should also add, this is a complete separate thing, but booster potions are awesome. And like, they're actually like, you actually want treasure, you're like, oh, cool. A healing potion. That's awesome. Like, cause that's going to make my recovery really powerful and I can use it during combat, which I otherwise couldn't do. So it does a lot of things that make you go, man, the people who were playing this were playing a lot of D&D and they were just like, these are all the things we hate about D&D. Let's change them. Let's fix them. So Donnie, where are you at right now? Are you running a game? You're going to run a game?
Nope. Running it. I actually had to convert a character from Pathfinder 2e, because one of them wanted to keep playing. It's the same world.
Right. Same world, same campaign, different system.
Yes, absolutely. So, and the quirk of my world, is that if I've established somebody as a character in one system, as an NPC in one system, they stay in that system.
Okay.
So, God help you if you go up against a 2nd edition mage, right? It's casting, certain spells that were able to stack, So anyway,
tangent to your tangent, but I totally understand because when we played our 4th edition campaign, at the end of it, when they were in the high level, epic levels, they found out that like a lot of things that were happening were actually due to like their old characters, and they had to go like to their old characters like hideout or the fortress, and they were there and they had to fight them. But I was like, but they still have all the broken 3rd edition spells,
right.
because they didn't get upgraded with the edition.
Stacking shocking grass, for example.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I had to convert one character, a goblin barbarian, and so there's been some custom work that had to be done, and then we'll have a new one, a set of new characters that are coming in.
How would you do a barbarian in Earthdawn? Because there's not really a barbarian class, right?
Well, yeah, no, there's no barbarian class. I'm probably being a little too lenient. I'm gonna let them. They have already picked. They're going straight up warrior.
Okay.
They're taking a lot of damage reduction talents. Just normal things.
Yeah. I could see Sky Raider also maybe.
Sky Raider. They're probably going to, since this is a big shift, they're probably actually going to pick up Air Sailor as well. Because the introduction of an airship has happened in my campaign. So
okay, there you
go. Or maybe it's Air Sailor or Sky Raider, whichever.
Right.
But the rest of them, Weaponsmith, Troubadour, and what's the other one? Beastmaster.
So no magicians. What a shame.
No magician. No. Well, and you know what? You don't really need one.
That's true. That's true. That's
yeah.
true. I love spells in Earthdawn.
Sure.
I think they're so cool, and there's such a fun strategy to them, and it's not Vancian, and it's really neat. I mean, the spellcasting system is pretty cool.
And
Derek
honestly,
says air sailors are too pretty.
I saw that. That's funny. I think at least for this getting back into it, and it'll be our system for quite a while. But getting back into it, I'm fine with nobody taking a spellcaster just immediately.
Sure. I mean, it does add an extra level of complication. You know, this is definitely a game because to be clear, spellcasters, they have talents just like all the other disciplines do. But then they also have their spells. So, you know, that is a more for sure a more complex class. Because now
Deeper Secrets.
I don't have that book.
Oh yeah, so Deeper Secrets, which was a Kickstarter recently, and the PDFs are out. They added even more. They added spell knacks now. So you know the
customizations of individual spells.
Exactly. Yeah. So it does add another layer.
Yeah, but you know, Boothby's here. Hello, Boothby. Boothby,
Hey,
we were talking about you earlier when we wanted to understand. Did you think that Rebel Moon was the greatest movie of all time or just great? We weren't sure. But you weren't here to express your love for Rebel Moon. What I love about systems or RPGs. I love RPGs that are modular. I love RPGs that come out with a new book and it basically says, "Hey, here's a toolbox," right? And you know, before you were totally fine just, you know, using your drill driver to build that deck. But hey, here's an impact driver. It does the same job, a little bit more specialized, but a lot better in this certain instance. And it can't do other things. So, do you need it? Nope. But if you want to get real serious about it and you're looking to, you know, be more specific and more focused, then here's this option. I don't like it when games basically, you know, just say like, I like systems. I like adding systems that I can leave or take, you know? And I think that's so cool. And again, I love the way that they did the companion. Again, I don't know this book because I didn't kickstart it, but the companion I do have, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, no, it's all of the systems, like you said, you could take them or leave them. And I was able to take specials from Mithras.
Okay.
And bring them right in to the Earthdawn system as well, because it's just success levels.
It's success levels.
And so, you know, if you wanted to blind your opponent, like in Mithras, or if you want to choose your hit location for narrative reasons, you know, you can get 2 successes, you can do it.
Right.
You know, so it's easy to add.
Yeah. Again, it's I also, you know, this is from Legend of the Five Rings, but I like games that have a kind of like Pathfinder 2 does this. It's just kind of binary in that if you score over what you need, you know, you do a critical hit, but it's just either regular hit or critical hit. In Earthdawn, you have obviously every 5 is an additional success level. And like you said, using the Mithras, being able to spend those to do different effects, I think is really cool. Because then it's like, well, I could just do more damage, but I could also knock them down or blind them or do something awesome like that. And I think that's a really fun way to like, because there's always that problem where you roll really high and, you know, at least in Pathfinder 2 you crit, but it's like a lot of times you roll really high and you're like, if I hit by 1, it would have done the same thing. And that kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
I have a question for you though, Derek.
Yeah.
Because this broke my brain.
Okay.
The special metal.
Yeah.
Special metal in Earthdawn.
Orichalcum.
Okay. For the past 20 some plus years, I've been calling it oraculum.
Okay.
My brain broke. And the reason I've realized that it was not what I was saying is I watched the second Aquaman movie. And that was a mistake in and of itself, but that metal was also there. So
okay.
Orichalcum.
Now let's see what Google says. Here we go. Are you gonna talk?
Orichalcum.
You won't be able to hear this, Donnie, but
Orichalcum.
yeah. So
Orichalcum.
Orichalcum is how it pronounced it. But so orichalcum is a kind of a gold-like. It's like magic gold, and it's basically all of the elements. It's elemental earth, elemental fire, elemental water, elemental earth, maybe elemental wood. I don't know. But it's all five of the magical elements combined into one material. So it's kind of like the de facto magic. It's the mithril of this world. It's kind of the default magic. Yeah, magic metal. Yeah, exactly, Derek. But yeah. Now, how did I pronounce it correctly? Well, because I had no idea how to pronounce it when I was a kid, and at some point I just looked it up.
It's just weird. For 20 years, my brain has just not seen the extra syllables.
Well, I mean, as a long-standing fan of this channel, who, by the way, is about to get you're about to get your 3-year shout out for the Patreon, because you signed up in December, 3 years ago, if you can believe that. Yeah. 2021. We were just so young. There's a long-standing joke on this channel of how badly I mispronounce so many things from Golarion, like, Iomade and, and all these other different gods and stuff like that. And people are just like, Derek, that's not even close to how you pronounce that. And I was like, it sounds cool to me. And everyone, it's one of those things, you never notice it, but then suddenly you're the guy with the YouTube channel, and there's like, 50 people in your comments going like, did you even play this game? I'm like, how did you know how to pronounce any of this crap? Yeah. I'm sorry that the made up imaginary god. Yes, Derek, I got one pronunciation right. That is true. I'll take my orichalcum.
Boothby prefers my pronunciation. That's why I like Boothby.
I want to say, I think when we were young, before we looked it up, we called it oraculum.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
So, or something like that. But, now, do I think orichalcum sounds good? No.
No.
No. Let's call it what it is. No, I do not. So what do you got going on for the holidays, Donnie?
This is the first Christmas where one of my children will not be waking up with us.
Oh.
In other words, they're out of the house. One of them just got married.
Right.
And yeah, so we won't see the first of them until like the afternoon. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, so they're still coming over, just
my oldest. My youngest is up there in Cleveland next to you guys.
Right. But I assume they're coming home.
No. They got his parents coming in. So.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be pretty quiet for us. I'm building a shed. So today was actually my last job day for the year.
Oh, nice. Yeah. We're officially not off until the 13th, but
it's not far.
But or not the 13th, sorry, the 20, whatever next week is, the 20th. So I've got 8 or 9 more days, but we're basically off for those 2 weeks at the end of the year. But that's nice.
I mean, it just slows down so much, though, right? I mean, yeah. It doesn't my work too. So.
Well, I got a couple job objectives I got to try to finish up. So, and also because I told everybody, I'm like, look, I'm not traveling for the holidays. If you have any like time sensitive stuff that needs to be run the business type stuff, drop it on me. I'll be around to run it, because I'm not doing anything either. Like I said, we're already 20% of the way there to me doing a New Year's Eve stream. So what about are you running any other games? Are you playing in any other games?
No, I'm not running any other games. I am playing in 2 Pathfinder 2e games that are, one of them's wrapping up.
Got it.
That'll probably be it for Pathfinder for me, for those 2. So.
Oh, as in,
what about you? I mean, you talk games all the time. Do you ever get to play?
Very rarely. No. So yeah, no, this year was like an all-time low for me in terms of actual gaming. Because, in prior years, I had my home group. We had sometimes multiple campaigns going on. Plus I had the channel games. And so, I was playing a lot. In fact, I was probably playing too much for me personally. I don't know how people like Ben and Boothby and stuff do it, but, for me, it was probably too much. But then this year we finished up Pathfinder 2 at the end of 2023. So we said, hey, we want to play something different. I was really getting into Forbidden Lands. Bob was getting into Forbidden Lands. So we played Forbidden Lands. But I mean, as crazy and as horrible as my year was and all the crazy stuff that happened to me, like that was also happening to Smith and Kaz and Buddy, my whole gaming group. So we were lucky if we got together once a month to put a game session together. So I think I only, I played a handful of games at some cons, and then I ran about 11 or 12 sessions of Forbidden Lands, and that was really about it. So it was probably an all-time low for me. In fact, that was the joke when I was having my mental breakdown. People were like, it turns out Derek has always been, just a couple months from having a mental breakdown, but RPGs were the only thing keeping him going. So I am putting together, kind of also to answer Dan's question, but Paladin, I want to say hello to you. Good to see you stop in there, buddy. So for a variety of reasons, I got interested in Torchbearer. We opened up the second edition box that I had bought 2 years ago or whatever. We opened it on stream, and I was like, oh, this game was really fun and cool. And again, I tried to play it with my group and years ago, and it didn't work. Well, they didn't like it. We were a different group then, and I don't know if it would go differently now, but I kind of felt like, well, they kind of indulged me by playing Forbidden Lands. Like, our next campaign is probably going to be like classic, fantasy type gaming, more heroic kind of action fantasy. I was like, I don't want to do this again to them. Forbidden Lands, Torchbearer is both kind of like, yeah, you're a scum of the earth, and you're crawling around on your hands and knees and dying of dysentery. So I was like, but you know what? I know that this isn't what like my patrons necessarily wanted to play, but I said, but I want to play it. So I put out I'll call, say, hey, does anybody want to play Torchbearer? And we actually got enough people interested that we're going to run 2 games.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, and of course I'm going to compete. I'm going to put them in the same dungeon, and I'm going to make them compete against each other. And I'm going to give prizes to the group that does the best by the end of the season. So it's going to be 9 to 12 sessions each. We're going to play twice a month on each group. So one group is actually entirely Bob's Sunday. So Bob is he's running Dragonbane. He's running a Dragonbane campaign for a handful of the patrons. And they're playing every other Sunday. Well, on the Sundays when they're not playing Dragonbane, Bob and the players from his Dragonbane campaign are all going to be in one Torchbearer game with me. So they're literally going to play every Sunday, but then half of them are going to be Dragonbane, half of them are going to be Torchbearer. And then we're going to have a Saturday crew as well. So
when you say they're going to be competing, are they going against the exact same scenarios, or are you literally having the outcome of one impact the other group? You got it. So you get there and you're excited because the treasure's going to be there, and you get it and it's empty chest with a note from the other group that says, suckers, Love it.
So, because one of the things I talked about actually was that Boothby is going to be one of my players. We're totally not going to leave trash for the other group. Right, you're right on point. So I talked about how in first edition AD&D, so obviously Torchbearer, I've talked about it at length. We've done a couple of streams about it. I've probably talked about it too much, judged by the number of views that haven't been watched. But one of the things is that it's definitely trying to be a love letter to the older versions of D&D. And I know a lot of people have these preconceptions about what old school D&D was, and I think a lot of them are, quite frankly, wrong. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is that in original D&D, there was this idea that the DM had a dungeon. They didn't really have a campaign. They might have had a campaign, but it was a dungeon. And they would run different groups in that dungeon throughout the course of the week. He'd have, their son and their kids would come over on Wednesday, but then Friday night, your old wargaming buddies would come over. And then Sunday, 2 guys are like, after church, are like, hey, can we swing by and go into the dungeon? And it was the same dungeon, and it was a persistent environment. So in a sense, you were competing against these other groups. And furthermore, on old random encounter tables, it was very common to encounter NPC adventuring parties. See, now we're sort of used to the snowflake hero, you're the chosen one, but back in old school D&D, you'd be in the dungeon and the GM might roll the random encounter and it's another adventuring party here to loot the same dungeon as you. And then weirdly, that in some ways gives you more opportunities for negotiation and convincing and dealing with people. And a lot of times, because when you're in this sort of like solo hero mode, everybody you fight is an enemy, and it kind of ruins the heroic nature of your characters when you're like, oh yeah, well we're here to stop the evil wizard too, like Or like, the party kicks in the door to the necromancer's lair and he's dead and the other party's looting the bodies, and you're like, what? And the GM's like, well, you guys took that extra rest and I rolled on this table and I just decided, well, the other party got here first and they killed the bad guy. Sorry, But what about the journal that'll lead us to the next adventure path? Yeah, sorry, the NPC adventurers are going on that adventure. But they already got the townsfolk. They got the reward. You guys can get, the sloppy seconds. And obviously that's not cool if that's what your group is there for that. But Torchbearer has this kind of fun, like, you're not somebody special. If you want to be somebody special, you got to earn it. So yes, I'm going to make it a persistent, a game as much as I can, and try to set up a situation where, even to the point where I'm going to have to trust Bob, because Bob's an admin on the Discord. I'm going to have each group. There's going to be a generic Torchbearer group where everybody can chat, but there's going to be 2 specific private groups. One for the Saturday crew, one for the Sunday crew, where they can, and it's just going to be access to, those people, where they can hatch and scheme and, try to come up with ideas, and they can decide to share knowledge or not, like with the other group. And, so yes, I do intend to sort of set them against each other and occasionally twist the knife just for the fun. Now, as for how well people are going to be able to observe this, to be determined. Obviously, I want to make sure that I get everybody's permission, for them to potentially be shared. Not everybody wants to be on TV. And there's multiple levels to that. Like, I might just say, hey, I'm just going to capture your audio. I'm not going to capture your video if you're comfortable with that. Or I might just share it only to my patrons and not to wider YouTube. So, then you're only being seen by, 100, 200 people that are theoretically people that you might already know from the Patreon, rather than potentially thousands of people anonymously out there on the internet. So we'll see where people's comfort levels are. But I'm totally fine with saying, hey, this is a Patreon only thing. It's a Patreon reward for patrons who are, running a lot of games or at a high tier and they can afford the tickets. And so if we don't put it to the main channel, that's fine with me. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it for the sake of these players. Now, some of the players might say, yeah, I think it'd be awesome. I'd love to share, our exploits with each other. So we'll see what they do. So
yeah, that'd be cool. I would definitely like to watch that, or
yes.
even just even if you did like a wrap up,
a summary. Yeah.
Just something like that. That would be fun.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how it goes, because again, it's a very weird game. It's a Loot Crane game. It's Burning Wheel-esque, so it'll be interesting. Get those clicks. So to put this into comparison, Derek, last Thursday I did, you guessed it, a tier ranking video of every Pathfinder 2 class. It was a 3 and almost 4 hour video. Shout out to Jackal and Karamak. And what did we do? We sat there and ranked classes: A tier, B tier, S tier, F tier. I think it performed 4 or 5 times better than my last 8 videos. So yes, if I want to get clicks, I should. And you know what? The truth of the matter is, if I did a 5e video, it'd probably do 5 times that. So, I'd probably get 20K views or something like that. But yes, I like what I like. If I'm talking about Pathfinder, it's because I want to talk about Pathfinder. If I'm talking about Torchbearer, it's because I want to talk about Torchbearer. And if I'm talking about Earthdawn, it's because I want you to buy it. And we do have a link in the description below. You can also find a link to our Patreon, which we've been talking about. You can be like Donnie and hang out with us for 3 years and sell your soul to the RPG gods. So it's a great experience. And if you do buy the Earthdawn game, maybe you can come run and play it on our server for some people who might be looking to play Earthdawn. Get some bonus tickets, buy merch, get into a cool game. There's all sorts of fun options that you can do. So pretty cool. Derek says, more than my previous 3 videos combined. And Derek, it's newest, so it hasn't had as much time. So if you adjust it for the time, if you give that video another week, it'd probably be even higher. So yeah, that pretty much looks good. I think the last video that we did that might have been even close to that was probably, I don't know, maybe a Pathfinder 2 video where we talked about Eldamon or something like that. So good stuff. All right, Donnie. Well, thank you, man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and if you're a member of the Patreon and you have questions about Earthdawn, shoot them over to Donnie. I mean, we'll if we need to, we'll get an Earthdawn channel going. I'd love to see some people maybe try to experiment. Do you know what the VTT situation is for Earthdawn?
The Foundry and what's the other one?
Roll20.
Roll20. They have modules for both. So
Okay.
I don't
Great.
know how good they are,
Right,
but they
right.
do have modules for both. So
Okay, well that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, remember, if it's a game and it's featured on the channel, there's a good chance that we'll offer a promotional advantage for it, and you can earn extra tickets by running that game. So always keep a lookout for the promotional advantages. And I myself would highly support anybody who wanted to run some Earthdawn for the group.
Yeah, yeah. And we haven't even, I mean, if you just want to like hit me up with questions or anything, but if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, just ask me about some lore. Because the lore of this game is absolutely stunning. So one of the best settings. So anyway, yeah. Thanks
Awesome.
for letting me come and hang out with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for being part of this for the second time. We really love having you on. We had you on for Mithras. We had you on for this. So when you go in on a system, you go pretty hard. But in this case, this is one that harkens way back. Now, I do have a question real quick. I did want to ask before is the group that you're playing with now still the same group that you started playing with originally in '95, or mostly so with the original Earthdawn?
Two of the players are.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, so two of the players are, and completely ecstatic about it. So.
Derek Rawlings asked, "What are your thoughts on Vergigorm?" Then Donnie.
Yeah, hit me up in the Discord. We'll talk.
The Slayer of Dragons.
Yes.
It's awesome that first edition they didn't have a GM guide, so it was just one book. It had all the monster stats in it. So called, I don't know if that's a problem, but I love that they're like, here's the end boss of the game, and it's just right here in the core player handbook.
Yes.
That thing's awesome. The Endless Stare, isn't that where it lives?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anyways, so very cool stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for hanging out tonight, and shout out to Lollipop, to Ben. I think we also had a super chat. Might have missed it, but shout out to everybody who threw some support at us this tonight. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back Thursday to talk more Pathfinder 2. We're going to be talking about the mid levels of the game. And I think that's a really important part because some of the things have changed in the mid levels, the feats and some of the spells that really do, I think, impact some of the performance ratings of some of the classes, particularly Sorcerer. So with that in mind, we will see you on Thursday, or we'll see you next Tuesday, or we'll see you next Thursday. We'll be around. And we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
You